Chapter 5192. He was completely restricted by Lung Lung's broken ice physique. Lung Lung didn't give him a chance to fight head-on. In this case, even if Liang Zhu was in his peak state, he had no chance, not to mention that he had lost control of his emotions. The result was as everyone expected. Liang Zhu's hysterical and crazy counterattack didn't bring him a chance to turn things around. Instead, it only made Lung Lung more proficient and made him lose faster. Enchanted and the other disciples of the Green Cloud sect were speechless. Although Liang Zhu was not a genius disciple, he had always been steady. It was rare to see him perform abnormally. Today's performance was useless from beginning to end, which was something that had never happened before. It was really shameful in front of everyone. Thump. Liang Zhu was once again kicked out by Lung Lung, and he struggled for a long time without being able to get up. A normal person in his situation would have already chosen to admit defeat. Liang Zhu was not the kind of person who would stubbornly persist to the end, but at this moment, he had been struck out of his wits. Except for some subconscious movements, he had already completely forgotten about admitting defeat. Seeing Liang Zhu's state, Lung Lung couldn't help but frown slightly. She and Liang Zhu didn't have any relationship in the past or the present, so naturally she wanted to stop. She didn't want to be ruthless, but Liang Zhu didn't want to admit defeat. She could only continue to fight until Liang Zhu admitted defeat or was knocked unconscious. Unexpectedly, just as Lung Lung was about to knock him out, her entire body froze all of a sudden. The aura around her began to surge wildly. The inexplicable aura made the surrounding people secretly shocked. Not only that, the crowd even felt that this scene was somewhat familiar. No way. Linny was the first to react. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl was going to repeat the scene of her breakthrough on the spot. Soon the other people also reacted. They looked at each other and cried out in shock. She's going to break through again? Didn't she just break through the day before yesterday? What's going on? One breakthrough after one match? Really? Even Shui Jianfeng was dumbfounded. In the last match, she broke through from the later stage of Foundation Establishment Realm to the peak of the later stage of Foundation Establishment Realm. If everything went well this time, she would break through from the peak of Foundation Establishment Realm to the great completion of Foundation Establishment Realm. Wasn't this leveling speed too exaggerated? Unbeknownst to him, Lung Lung had consumed a few supreme-grade foundation building pills that Linny had given her during her closed-door training for the past few months. Although she did not directly break through to the next level, it had left a huge amount of undigested medicinal power in her body. If it was just her usual cultivation, perhaps it would take a few months for the medicinal efficacy to be completely released. However, it just so happened that she was in time for the grand contest. Facing a strong opponent of the same level, especially in the tense atmosphere of the contest, Lung Lung's essence, qi, and spirit were all adjusted to the best state. Under such circumstances, it was easy for the medicinal efficacy to be released in advance. Naturally, the breakthrough on the spot would be a matter of course. Lung Lung. One Lung Lung. One Lung Lung. Linny knew about the inside story, but the others didn't. They thought it was purely because of Lung Lung's superb aptitude. She was more than a genius, she was a super genius among geniuses. For a while, Lung Lung's position in everyone's heart was raised by a lot. She was originally a genius disciple with a little fame. Now she had become the leading figure of the young generation in the immemorial martial world, just like Ling Tianyu of the Thousand Blades flying together. The process of breakthrough could be long or short. If it was purely a good preparation, it might just be a matter of a blink of an eye. However, Lung Lung was breaking through for the second time in 3 days. No matter how much medicine was accumulated in her body, the whole process of breakthrough was difficult to be smooth. Just like now, Lung Lung's aura was obviously unstable. It seemed that even if she could break through successfully, it would take a lot of time. However, the crowd didn't show the slightest dissatisfaction. It was a rare experience for them to be able to see Lung Lung's legendary breakthrough in one match. This was an excellent topic for them to brag to others in the future. However, in the process of waiting, Liang Zhu, who had lost his soul, finally came to his senses. When he saw Lung Lung not far from him, he subconsciously made a counterattack, which immediately caused a burst of exclamation from the crowd. Bastard! A murderous intent flashed in Lin Yi's eyes. He was about to make a move to get rid of this reckless trash. However, before he made a move, Enchanted had already rushed into the field. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and slapped Liang Zhu away. Uncle Xan, what are you doing? Shui Jianfeng said with dissatisfaction. He couldn't wait for Liang Zhu to interrupt Lung Lung's breakthrough. At that time, not only would Lung Lung not be able to advance to the next level, she would also suffer a serious backlash. If she was unlucky, she might even lose her life. This was a great thing for him, but he didn't expect that it would be destroyed by Enchanted. Just as you can see, Enchanted face was extremely gloomy at the moment. If Liangzu was only a disgrace to the Green Cloud sect because of his lack of strength, he would at most be ridiculed as a talent. However, now he actually did such a shameless thing. It was unbearable. If he didn't make a move and Liangzu interrupted Lung Lung's breakthrough, the entire Green Cloud sect of the North Island would be nailed to the pillar of shame, and become the laughingstock of the entire archaic Jianghu. Not only that, it was bound to greatly offend Lin Yi. Enchanted even seriously suspected that if he didn't make a move first to slap Liangzu away, this guy might have already become a corpse. Uncle Xan, although you're the leader of the team, you're also the only referee of the contest. Is it appropriate for you to interfere in the process of the contest without any disguise? Shui Jianfeng sneered. In his opinion, this was a ready-made blackmail. Everyone looked at Enchanted. As a referee, he must always be an absolutely objective and neutral third party. Logically speaking, as long as the contest was not over, including Enchanted as a referee, no one could interfere in anything in the field. Even if Liangzu's sneak attack during Lung Lung's breakthrough was despicable and shameless, it was still allowed by the rules. Enchanted action was indeed too arbitrary. Chapter 5193. This. Shui Jianfeng choked and forced himself to say, "That's also against the rules." "Well, if you insist, you can report it to the Archaic Alliance." Enchanted glanced at him. Shui Jianfeng snorted and gave up resentfully. Of course, he could not let go of Enchanted weakness, but even if he really reported it to the Archaic Alliance, it would be useless. Because this was human nature. Except for the shameless Liangzu, what Enchanted did was a happy thing for everyone else. The Archaic Alliance would never come forward to punish him, otherwise, it would be seen as encouraging Liangzu's shameless behavior. After a while, Lung Lung finally succeeded in breaking through. Under the envious gaze of the crowd, she officially advanced to the Foundation Establishment Perfected Realm and became the person who truly stood at the top of all the disciples of the Archaic Alliance. He had the shattered ice physique to begin with, and now he had become a legend. Other than Ling Tianyu and Shui Jianfeng, there was no one else present who could compare to him. Even Duanmu Yu and the others might be slightly inferior to him. This was the true meaning of having boundless prospects. "Miss Lung Lung, I'm really sorry just now. I apologize to you on behalf of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island." Enchanted walked in front of her and bowed deeply with a solemn expression. Lung Lung was stunned. She was fully focused on breaking through just now, so she did not notice Liangzu's little action at all, and did not know what happened after that. It was only until Lin Yi walked over and explained in a low voice that Lung Lung finally understood. She quickly said, "Master Xen, you're being too serious. You don't have to apologize to me. Actually, I should be the one thanking you properly. No matter what, you're the one who protected me." Even if Enchanted did not step forward, Liangzu could not hurt Lung Lung at all. After all, Lin Yi was watching. However, Enchanted still did her a big favor. No matter what his consideration was, Lung Lung was the biggest beneficiary. There was no doubt about this. "Miss Lung Lung is too polite. That's what I should do." Enchanted smiled bitterly and nodded to Lin Yi. He then announced to the crowd that the competition would continue. The rest of the competition was uneventful, and a day later, it was Ling Shan and the others' turn. This time, most of them passed without any mishap. After the first round, they were much more used to the new level of Foundation establishment, and the counter moves Lin Yi had taught them were much more proficient as well. Naturally, they were more at ease when facing opponents of the same level as them. This time, other than their own people, the only one who lost was Ziyu. This girl got Yu Bing in the first round and got a win for free. It looked like she was lucky, but it was actually a loss. If she had gone all out in the first round like the others instead of just going through the motions, she might not have lost the second round. Strictly speaking, her opponent wasn't that strong, and the only reason she lost was because she wasn't used to the early phase of Foundation establishment and the atmosphere. She still had to pay the tuition fee. But this wasn't a bad thing. After this loss, Ziyu had matured a lot. Compared to success, most of the time, failure was more motivating. Especially for a little girl like Ziyu who didn't know how high the sky was, this experience was even more valuable. Lin Yi smiled as he looked at Ziyu, who was training extra. This was good too. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't always protect everyone under his wing. If even the youngest Ziyu was starting to realize this, then the others wouldn't slack off either. After all, if they couldn't even beat Ziyu, then they'd really lose face. This was quite a pleasant surprise. In the third round, the number of people who signed up for the cross-level challenge was less than half of the second round. There were only 3 people in total. At this time, everyone had more or less understood each other. In order to succeed in challenging someone of a higher level, other than having sufficient strength, there was another crucial condition, and that was to catch the opponent off guard. Only then would it be possible for the stronger opponent to fail miserably. Otherwise, if everyone knew each other thoroughly, the originally small chance of victory would be even slimmer. Just like that, many of the disciples who had the impulse to challenge him gave up spontaneously. However, even though the number of people had decreased, the challengers had clearly become much stronger. Those who still had the guts to challenge him at this time were naturally not easy to deal with. Of the 3 cross-level battles, although only one of them succeeded in the end, from the looks of it, the other 2 battles were also evenly matched. The 2 challengers' chances of winning were actually not low. It was just that their luck was not too good, which led to them losing in the end. I didn't think so at first, but now that I look at it, the rules of this tournament are really cruel. One of the disciples sighed, and the others sighed as well. Even Linny couldn't help but nod. There were a total of 6 people in the 3 battles, but there was only one winner out of the 6, and that was the challenger who succeeded in the cross-level challenge. As for the other 5, they probably didn't have a good ending. The one who succeeded in the cross-level challenge didn't need to be mentioned. According to the rules, he was already eliminated. As for the remaining 4, the results weren't as direct, but the process was too intense. All 4 of them were injured quite badly, and unless they had some strong elixir like the Great Recovery Pill, they wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. If this trend continued, not only would they not be able to win the 3rd round, but even the 4th and 5th rounds wouldn't be good either. If they lost all 3 rounds, they would naturally be eliminated. Just 3 rounds had eliminated 5 people. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the rules were cruel. The higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance had racked their brains to come up with these rules. Those who were able to stand out under these cruel rules, no matter how strong they were, at the very least, they weren't weaklings unless they were extremely lucky. But then again, for a trial like the Archaic Trials that was full of chance, luck was also a part of one's strength. To put it nicely, luck was also a part of one's strength. Chapter 5194. Due to Lung Lung's breakthrough, the number of disciples in the foundation-building realm full cycle was restored to 8. Of course, this was only temporary. Everyone knew that this kind of competition would get more intense as time went on, and the probability of casualties would increase. Xianijia immediately began to draw lots for everyone. Everyone was looking forward to it. With Lin Yi, Shui Jianfeng, and Lung Lung, the 3 gimmick characters, in addition to Duan Muyu and other powerful disciples from various sects, the battle between the disciples in the foundation-building realm full cycle would be interesting. Everyone would not miss it. In this group, the most anticipated match was none other than the pinnacle battle between Lin Yi and Shui Jianfeng. It was a pity that this round of drawing didn't fulfill everyone's wishes, but the result didn't disappoint them too much, because this time Shui Jianfeng's opponent was Lung Lung, who had just broken through. Interesting, really interesting. Both of them are genius disciples of the Snow Sword sect, and they have a grudge against each other. This is a civil war in the Snow Sword sect. Everyone was delighted. They were the typical spectators. However, for Lung Lung, the result of drawing lots was not that fun. As a disciple of the same sect, she was quite familiar with Shui Jianfeng's strength. Although they were on the same level in name, she had just broken through to the foundation-building realm full cycle. Obviously, she could not be compared with Shui Jianfeng. This battle would not bode well for her. Lung Lung, you have to be prepared to admit defeat. This guy's strength is not what you expected. Lin Yi suddenly pulled Lung Lung aside and reminded her softly. What do you mean? Lung Lung was shocked when she heard that. She indeed felt that the outcome of this battle was not optimistic, but she had the unique gift of the Shattered Ice physique after all. Facing Shui Jianfeng, who was also in the foundation-building Great Circle, it was not that she had no chance of winning at all. At least she still had a chance to fight, but Lin Yi's words clearly said that she would definitely lose? There's something I haven't told you. Actually, Shui Jianfeng's current strength is not in the foundation-building realm full cycle, but in the Gold Core realm, said Lin Yi. Gold Core realm full cycle? Lung Lung was stunned for a moment. If her opponent was a foundation-building full cycle, she would definitely stand a chance against him. However, he was only a beginner-stage Gold Core cultivator. She quickly lowered her voice and exclaimed in astonishment, how could he be a beginner-stage Gold Core cultivator? Breaking through to the Gold Core realm was many times more difficult than breaking through to the Foundation realm. Even with the spiritual chi conditions of the transition islands, one had to have medicinal pills like the Gold Core Realm. However, medicinal pills like the Gold Core Realm could only be obtained after passing the sex special test, and then approved by the Elders Guild after a discussion. Shui Jianfeng had clearly not passed the test, so how could he have the Gold Core Realm? That's because he betrayed the Snow Sword School and secretly sought refuge with the center. He consumed the medicinal pills given by the center, which allowed him to recover his dantian and meridians. At the same time, his strength increased by a great deal. He broke through from great completion of foundation establishment to early gold core stage. Lenny explained. In order to prevent people from gossiping, he did not mention these things to the others previously. However, he had no choice but to say it in front of Cold. What? Cold was extremely shocked. Shui Jianfeng had always insisted that he was a traitor. She did not expect that he was the real traitor. Don't tell anyone about this first. Just pretend that you don't know anything. I'll explain the rest to you later. I have my own arrangements, Lenny reminded. Cold was stunned for a long time before she finally digested this shocking inside story. She took a deep breath and nodded heavily. I understand. And you must be careful. Shui Jianfeng does not have good intentions. He will definitely find an opportunity to deal a heavy blow to you later. He might even take your life directly. So you must not force yourself. Surrender immediately when the situation is not good. Understand? Lenny said seriously. He was very clear that Shui Jianfeng was already unscrupulous in order to strike him down. He had been thinking of ways to get people to deal a killing blow to Lingshan and the others. Although he did not succeed, this guy had never given up. Now that he had the chance to face Cold directly, he would definitely not give up. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing, Cold nodded. Hey, what are you two whispering about again? Can we start now? Shui Jianfeng shouted from afar. He finally had the chance to deal with Cold with his own hands. This was really a blessing from the heavens. He could not wait any longer. Cold and Lenny looked at each other. They immediately stepped into the arena and said indifferently, please. Sure. Although both of us are disciples of the Snow Sword School, we have never really fought before. Shui Jianfeng smiled coldly with a playful expression. This was a matter of course. No matter how much Cold was valued by the higher-ups of the school, her strength level was still too low. She was only at the early stage of foundation building before she came out to the secular world to train. Shui Jianfeng, on the other hand, was at the full cycle of foundation building. Their strengths were not on the same level at all. Naturally, there was no point in sparring with each other. So what? Cold looked at him coldly. Then I'll take this opportunity to have a taste of your ice shatter physique. I hope you won't disappoint me too much, Shui Jianfeng said disdainfully. If it was in the past, he would still be a little afraid of Cold, who was at the full cycle of foundation building. However, it was completely different now. Same to you. Cold's expression was still as calm as usual. In the eyes of others, they would think that she was holding back her strength to defeat Shui Jianfeng. Even Shui Jianfeng was fooled by her. She secretly sneered in her heart. I'll let you taste the taste of despair later. After Xianjia's announcement, the duel between the two officially began. However, to everyone's surprise, there was not the fiery atmosphere that everyone expected at the beginning. Both Shui Jianfeng and Lung Lung did not act rashly. Both of them had chosen to strike after the other. Shui Jianfeng relied on his overwhelming strength advantage. To him, it did not matter whether he struck first or later. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, he did not want to expose his strength at the early stage of Gold Core. Therefore, he chose the strategy to force Cold to strike first. Then he would wait for an opportunity to counterattack. This guy is a lot more experienced. Lenny could not help but raise his eyebrows at the scene. Chapter 5195. The situation made Lung Lung frown. She was also thinking of retreating in order to advance. After all, her strength was at a disadvantage. This was the most reasonable choice for her, but she did not expect Shui Jianfeng to be so calm. In the silent confrontation, the atmosphere suddenly became oppressive and tense. If one's willpower was slightly weaker, even a simple bystander would feel suffocated, let alone the two people who were confronting each other in the field. The longer the confrontation, the greater the pressure. When it reached a certain point, the pressure was enough to crush one alive. In the end, one would even lose the courage to attack and become a real defeated soldier. Of course, this was definitely not Shui Jianfeng's plan. What he wanted was not just a victory but Lung Lung's life. If he really forced Lung Lung to admit defeat, it would be a complete failure for him. Finally, after the two of them confronted each other for the time it took to burn a stick of incense, Lung Lung finally took the initiative to move. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. With every step she took, her speed suddenly increased. After 10 steps, not only did her speed increase to the extreme, even her aura had also climbed to the peak. Smart. Xianjia's eyes lit up. The others did not understand it, but he understood the deep meaning behind it. Linny nodded as well. Cold was indeed very smart. The confrontation just now wasn't a good thing for her. Due to the difference in strength between them, it was impossible for her to be more composed than Xue Jianfeng. On the contrary, it had unknowingly worn down his most important drive and confidence, to the extent that he had already lost before he even made a move. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the advantages and disadvantages. Naturally, Lung Lung herself was clear about it. However, this was her established strategy. She could not mess up the moment she started. Therefore, even if she had to bite the bullet, she could only confront Xue Jianfeng. When she reached the limit of her endurance for the time it took to burn a stick of incense, she did not rashly make the first move. Instead, she came up with this method to regroup herself. In just 10 steps, she had regained the peak aura she had when she fought with her opponent. To be able to do this under such huge pressure, Lung Lung was indeed not simple. If it was someone else, it would be hard for them not to collapse on the spot, just like Liang Zhu, who made a fool of himself in the previous round. You're quite something. Xue Jianfeng was also very surprised, but he immediately sneered disdainfully. Even so, it's still a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Can you stop it? Although Cold Lung's performance was eye-catching, it could not change the fact that she was forced to make a move. In terms of strategy alone, she had actually fallen into a passive position. In the face of an opponent like Xue Jianfeng, it was obviously unrealistic to strike first. Even if Cold had recovered to her peak condition, the series of attacks that came head-on could not hurt Xue Jianfeng at all. Xue Jianfeng did not even unsheath his sword as he easily dodged all of her punches and kicks. This formed a sharp contrast with the previous battle between Lung Lung and Liang Zhu. The same attack made Liang Zhu breathless until he was finally defeated. But now it didn't cause any threat to Xue Jianfeng. This was the huge gap in strength. You're being praised to the point of being a god. Could it be that you only have this much? Isn't this a little too disappointing? Xue Jianfeng mocked. Lung Lung ignored him and continued to attack ferociously. Even though she knew that she could not hurt her opponent, she did not have the slightest intention of giving up. I know, she's trying to form a snow form. Someone among the spectators finally came to a realization. Xue Jianfeng's series of dodging movements were undoubtedly elegant and calm, but at the same time, it also gave Lung Lung the opportunity to form a snow form easily. After the previous 2 rounds of competition, everyone had a deep impression of the strength of the snow form. Are you stupid? What's the use of forming a snow form in front of Xue Jianfeng? Someone immediately retorted. In terms of controlling the fire of the snow form, Xue Jianfeng was definitely far more experienced than Lung Lung. Using the snow form to deal with others might be useful, but to use it against Xue Jianfeng, it was simply showing off in front of an expert. Perhaps one would even shoot oneself in the foot. That's right. Moreover, Lung Lung has the shattered ice physique. Why would she need to put in so much effort to form a snow form? Someone else chimed in. After all, in terms of restraining effect, the shattered ice physique was far more unique than the snow form. Moreover, it was more difficult to defend against. If Lung Lung really did that, she would be neglecting the essentials. She would not do such a meaningless and stupid thing. However, if it's not for forming a snow form, then what is she doing now? Is she just struggling in vain? Everyone had a puzzled look on their faces. They did not know the true strength of Xue Jianfeng. From their point of view, although Lung Lung had just achieved a breakthrough, she was still a prodigy with the shattered ice physique. Moreover, she had also created a legend of one breakthrough after another. Therefore, she must be at the same level as Xue Jianfeng. Even if Lung Lung was slightly weaker in terms of strength, the difference would not be too huge. It was impossible for her to be so powerless in the current situation where she could not even touch the corner of Xue Jianfeng's clothes, right? No one would believe such a thing except for Xue Jianfeng himself. Although he had yet to fully display the true strength of an early-stage gold core cultivator, even so, he was not a match for an ordinary foundation-perfected disciple. It was more than enough to deal with Lung Lung's level of attack. Just like that, Lung Lung had continuously attacked Xue Jianfeng for 20 times. Xue Jianfeng was still unscathed. Just when everyone thought that he was going to continue dodging in a playful manner, he suddenly unsheathed his snow sword. His first move was the snow sword sect's iconic snow form. Xianjia's expression changed. Although Shui Jianfeng did not display his strength of an early-stage gold core cultivator, and the others did not notice anything unusual, Xanijia was an early-stage gold core expert. He could more or less sense something unusual, but he could not react in time. This guy is really full of confidence. Linny could not help but laugh and shake his head. Shui Jianfeng's snow form was indeed very sudden. In terms of power, it was considered top-notch among the Foundation perfected level. An ordinary person would not be able to withstand it. However, he was facing Lung Lung after all. Was this an ordinary opponent? Sure enough, Shui Jianfeng revealed his killing intent at this moment. However, Lung Lung seemed to be prepared for it. She had already retreated a moment before Shui Jianfeng struck. Shui Jianfeng was slightly stunned. He seemed to be a little surprised. The snow form was a technique that could easily reveal its flaws. His stunned reaction made the flaw even more obvious. Good chance. The spectator's eyes lit up. Chapter 5196. So careful. Aren't you a little too timid? Shui Jianfeng snorted. He had indeed miscalculated the snow-killing style in the beginning, but the obvious flaw that was exposed later was deliberate. He wanted to use this opportunity to bait Lung Lung into taking the bait. As long as Lung Lung advanced rashly, he had absolute confidence that he could kill her with one strike. At worst, he would just reveal his gold core realm in public. However, since Lung Lung insisted on not taking the bait, he dared not act rashly. Otherwise, if Lung Lung was lucky enough to escape but exposed his strength at the same time, his wishful thinking would be in vain. By then, Lung Lung would definitely admit defeat in public, and he would not have the chance to attack again. You talk too much nonsense. Lung Lung had already attacked again. Her attacks were as violent as the beginning, but she still could not hurt Shui Jianfeng at all. Is that so? You may not hear this nonsense in the future. For you, this might be your last life experience. Shui Jianfeng grinned meaningfully, and then kept his snow sword again, returning to the initial situation. He was now like a patient beast, waiting for the moment his prey showed a flaw, and then pounced on it. Before that, he had to keep his claws to avoid scaring his prey away. What is she doing? Bing Wuqing was secretly puzzled as she watched this scene. As a chess piece that Lin Yi had secretly subdued, of course, he knew that Lung Lung must have known the difference in strength between him and the enemy. Logically speaking, there were only two choices in this situation. Either she admitted defeat as soon as the fight started, which should be the safest way to ensure her safety, or she chose to admit defeat after putting on an act for a while. This was more or less risky, but it could be used to numb Shui Jianfeng and let him continue to think that his strength had not been exposed. However, what Lung Lung was doing now had completely exceeded the level of putting on an act. All of her attacks seemed futile, but they were definitely not meaningless struggles. There had to be a reason behind it. It was just that Bing Wuqing couldn't figure out what exactly she wanted to do at the moment. It was normal that he could not figure it out. Other than Lung Lung herself, only Lin Yi knew the answer to this question, because he was the one who helped Lung Lung research and develop this trump card. In the blink of an eye, the two of them exchanged over a dozen moves. Just as Shui Jianfeng's patience was about to run out, Lung Lung suddenly asked, "How many moves have you made?" What? Shui Jianfeng was stunned. He subconsciously replied, 32 moves? That's enough. Lung Lung nodded. Then she suddenly stopped moving and said faintly from 3 steps away, "I'll let you try out my new move, prison drawing." As soon as he finished speaking, Shui Jianfeng felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. As a disciple of the Snow Sword School, he had sufficient resistance to the cold, but at this moment he truly felt what was called bone-piercing cold. This was no longer a problem of his movement technique being affected. If he could not break free in time, even he would definitely be frozen to death. Prison on the ground? Looking at Shui Jianfeng's strange posture of being frozen in an instant, everyone was collectively shocked. Each of them looked at Lung Lung as if they were looking at a monster. Could it be that all her previous struggles were not in vain, but in preparation for this prison on the ground? Upon seeing the situation, Lin Yi could not help but reveal a satisfied smile. Lung Lung's biggest reliance was naturally her ice-shattering physique. However, she had never been able to truly unleash the power of her unique move. If she was still in the early stage of foundation building, it would not be a big deal. However, she was now in the full circle of foundation building after a series of breakthroughs, and was about to break through to the golden core stage. If she did not even have a basic trump card, it would be unjustifiable. Once she encountered a strong opponent, she would be at a great disadvantage. Therefore, Lin Yi had already begun to plan and design for Lung Lung a few months ago. After continuous attempts and improvements, It was only right before the start of the training tournament that the results were finalized. However, the opponents that Lung Lung encountered in the early stage of Golden Core stage were not strong enough, so it could not be used. It was only until she encountered Xue Jianfeng, a strong opponent in the early stage of Golden Core stage, that it could finally be put to use. By subtly integrating the characteristic of ice-shattering physique into her vital energy, and then using a special method to cause the vital energy to remain after it was released. As the vital energy itself was not strong, its lethality was not strong either. Naturally, a strong opponent like Xue Jianfeng would not pay attention to it. He would not notice that the residual vital energy was following him. When it accumulated to a certain extent, it would become a strange prison that followed him like a shadow. By the time Lung Lung fully unleashed the characteristic of ice-shattering physique, even Xue Jianfeng would not be able to withstand the bone-chilling coldness of the prison. Moreover, he could not shake it off even if he wanted to, nor could he escape from it even if he wanted to. This was the prison of drawing ground. Even though it was a newly created technique and there was still a lot of room for improvement in the future, the prison of drawing ground was enough to fully unleash the advantage of the ice-shattering physique. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was Lung Lung's unique trump card. If she was only facing an opponent of the same level, Lung Lung did not have to go through so much trouble to cast the prison of drawing ground. She could easily release it in 3 to 5 moves. Its power was enough to freeze an opponent of the same level to death. However, Xue Jianfeng was an early-stage Golden Core stage expert. 3 to 5 moves were obviously not enough. That was why Lung Lung did not care about anything and used a total of 32 moves to create this extreme version of the prison of drawing ground. Lung Lung was initially worried whether this technique would be effective or not. After all, this was not an ordinary battle against an opponent of a higher level, but an actual battle against an opponent of a higher realm. Even the extreme version of the prison of drawing ground might not be effective. However, after seeing Xue Jianfeng's condition, her heart that was hanging in suspense was immediately relieved. It was not just effective, it was simply too effective. If Xue Jianfeng could not think of a way to break the prison of drawing ground in time, he would definitely be frozen to death on the spot after a while. Amazing. Bing Wuqing glanced at Lin Yi discreetly. Her heart was filled with reverence. Even though the prison of drawing ground was Lung Lung's unique technique, in her opinion, the one who was truly amazing was still Lin Yi. Compared to the prison of drawing ground itself, this unrestrained creativity was the truly fearsome thing. His profound understanding of vital energy was definitely not a realm that a mere foundation-building expert could have. Even Golden Core stage and Nascent Soul stage experts might not be able to have such a profound understanding. Thinking back to the miraculous abilities that Lin Yi had displayed previously, Bing Wuqing could not help but be shocked once again. Who exactly was this person? Chapter 5197. This was under the condition that they did not know Xue Jianfeng's true strength. Otherwise they would have gone crazy collectively. What a pity it's still lacking a little. Lin Yi shook his head imperceptibly. He was also shocked that the confinement spell could be so powerful. However, it was Lung Lung's first time using it in public. She was still not proficient enough. She was still lacking if she wanted to strangle Xue Jianfeng, an early-stage Golden Core expert. As expected, as soon as Lin Yi's voice died away, there was a sudden change in the field. Ah! Xue Jianfeng let out a series of deafening roars. Then, the veins all over his body twitched violently. An unprecedented and inexplicable aura was released from his body. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. Even Xenijia cried out involuntarily, "Early-stage Gold Core. He's already in the early-stage Gold Core." Although with Xue Jianfeng's strength as the #1 foundation-building expert, it was only a matter of time for him to break through to the Gold Core realm. If it happened in the ancient underworld, they would at most be surprised and would not be so shocked. However, the problem was that they were in the Transit Islands. Where did Xue Jianfeng get his Gold Core and when did he break through to the Gold Core realm? Why was there no movement at all? After a while, Xue Jianfeng finally moved freely again. It seemed that he had completely broken free from the prison on ground. His expression was terrible. He immediately pounced at Lung Lung with a ferocious look. In fact, it was no wonder that he was angry. This time, not only did he fail to take the opportunity to kill Lung Lung, but he was also forced to expose his Gold Core realm strength in public. To him, it was like going for wool and coming home shorn. I admit defeat. Lung Lung was already prepared for this. She immediately exited the field and shouted. According to the rules of the competition, as long as one of the two parties admitted defeat on the spot, they were not allowed to make any further attacks. However, Shui Jianfeng deliberately turned a deaf ear to it. Not only did he expose his gold core realm strength, but he was also frozen by Lung Lung's prison on ground. It was intolerable. Even if he had to break the rules, he had to kill her with one slash. Lung Lung was shocked. The extreme version of the prison on ground had consumed too much of her physical strength and vital energy. Facing Shui Jianfeng, who was like a mad beast, she had no strength to resist at all. However, before Shui Jianfeng could charge over, another figure arrived far faster than him. It was Lin Yi. Lin Yi had long guessed that Shui Jianfeng wouldn't leave the matter at that. With the strength of his primordial spirit now, even though he didn't have the confidence to fight against an Aurus core stage expert that was a whole realm higher, he still had an endless amount of miraculous tricks up his sleeves. It was enough to deal with Shui Jianfeng. Damn it. Shui Jianfeng was taken aback by Lin Yi's speed. If it wasn't for the orders from above, he would have taken the opportunity to kill Lin Yi and Lung Lung, killing two birds with one stone. Stop. At this time, Enchanted also intervened. He looked at Shui Jianfeng with full vigilance as if he was facing a formidable enemy. If Shui Jianfeng was still in the great completion of Foundation Establishment realm, he naturally would not be so nervous. However, he had to be careful when facing an expert of the same level. If Shui Jianfeng really made up his mind to do something reckless, he, as the leader of the team, would be in trouble. Shui Jianfeng finally stopped. Enchanted was also a strong opponent of the same level to him. Moreover, there was also Lin Yi, who was no less troublesome than Enchanted. In addition to that, there was also Lung Lung's prison drawing. If he continued to force his way, he was destined to suffer a great loss. He had no choice but to stop. However, Enchanted did not plan to let him go just like that. He scolded, "Lung Lung has already admitted defeat, but you still want to kill her. What's your intention? Do you really think that the rules of the trial competition are just for show? Are you trying to challenge the dignity of the entire Archaic Alliance?" Enchanted, don't you dare put shit on my head. My ears were frostbitten just now, so I didn't hear it. Shui Jianfeng said indifferently. Since he had shown his strength of the early gold core stage, there was naturally no need to call Enchanted master. As an expert of the same level, he only needed to call Enchanted by his name. This was the custom of the archaic underworld. Really? Enchanted obviously did not believe him. If you don't believe me, why don't you have a taste of her prison of drawing? Shui Jianfeng snorted and curled his lips. What he said was a random excuse, but it was true that he was frostbitten by the prison of drawing. Moreover, it was not an ordinary injury. If he did not take good care of it, there would be repercussions. Of course, Enchanted would not believe his nonsense. However, since Shui Jianfeng had said so, he could not continue to insist. He could only go along with the flow and said, "Since you didn't hurt Lung Lung, I'll turn a blind eye this time. You're on your own." Shui Jianfeng snorted and turned away without any appreciation. His priority now was to find a place to heal his injuries. It would be best if he could get some healing elixirs from the glasses professor. Unfortunately, everything was not going well for him. Not only did he fail to kill the people around Lin Yi according to his plan, but he was also injured due to his carelessness. Moreover, it was from the hands of Lung Lung, who had just reached the great perfection of Foundation Establishment realm. He really did not have the face to meet the glasses professor. Fortunately, he had won all 3 rounds and was qualified to participate in the trial. It would not matter even if he took his time to heal his injuries. The trial continued. Although the following duels also had a popular figure like Lin Yi, it was far less exciting than the first match because of his opponent. After all, Shui Jianfeng was a gold core stage master, and Lung Lung almost succeeded with the prison of drawing. It was a scene that had not been seen in the Archaic Alliance for decades. Even if it was a little dull at the beginning, it was still a rare classic duel. In comparison, the other duels of the great perfection of Foundation Establishment realm inevitably paled in comparison. Including Lin Yi's match, the remaining 3 duels of the great perfection of Foundation Establishment realm seemed to be lukewarm. Duan Muyu's match was relatively more interesting. Due to her loss to Lin Yi in the previous round, Duan Muyu's current record was 1 win and 1 loss. Therefore, this match was very important. It would be gratifying if she could successfully win, but if she lost, it would mean that she had to guarantee a complete victory in the next 2 rounds to qualify for the trial. Otherwise, she would be eliminated. Coincidentally, this time her opponent, Lei Gong, also had 1 win and 1 loss. They were also determined to win this duel. If her opponent was Shui Jianfeng or Lin Yi, Lei Gong might choose to admit defeat early. After all, it was impossible for him to be a match for either of them. It was better to conserve his strength for the next round of duels. Chapter 5198. Lei Gong knew that he was not a weakling. Facing an opponent like Duan Muyu, it was not impossible for him to win. Especially in the second round, Lin Yi's method of cracking the scent of autumn had given him an excellent reference. It was no exaggeration to say that he had at least a 60% chance of winning. As expected, in this duel where he was determined to win, Duan Muyu used the signature move of falling leaves in autumn as soon as he came up. Under the chilling autumn intent, he instantly became invisible just like before. Haha, child's play. Lei Gong was prepared for this. Almost at the same moment when Duan Muyu's figure disappeared, he had already cut her waist with his hand, almost copying Lin Yi's method of cracking the move in the previous round. This hand knife did not focus on power but speed. As long as he could successfully cut Duan Muyu's waist, he would definitely win. Although there was a slight suspicion of imitating, it had to be said that his response was indeed a brilliant psychological attack. Moreover, his reaction and speed were sufficiently fast, and it was extremely easy for others to be caught off guard. However, to his surprise, his knife hand actually missed. His knife hand slashed across, but there was still nothing in front of him. In the next moment, a palm-sized dark steel leaf abruptly smashed into his back. Lei Gong was originally a huge, burly man, but after being hit by this leaf, he was actually sent flying on the spot, directly over the heads of the crowd and into the sea. In this way he was naturally eliminated. A mountain of leaves. Xianjia's eyelids twitched. Although this move was far less famous than Scent of Autumn, it was one of the rare tough killer moves of the Yiling sect. Its power was top-notch in the foundation establishment stage. However, there were very few people in the Yiling sect who had truly mastered this move, so it was even more difficult for outsiders to see it. This was the first time Duan Muyu had used this move in public. To be able to send a burly man like Lei Gong flying with one move, a mountain of leaves really lived up to its name. Seeing Duan Muyu calmly walk to the side to meditate and recover her chi, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. This woman was as tough as a man, really not someone to be trifled with. With Scent of Autumn and a mountain of leaves, no one except for people like Lin Yi would be able to withstand it. The third round of the competition continued in an orderly manner. With the previous two rounds as a foreshadowing, the performance of the contestants in this round was significantly less probing attacks. They often used their trump cards right from the start, and the duels entered a white-hot stage right from the start. Basically, the winner could be decided in 2 or 3 moves. This way they could save more stamina for the 4th and 5th round of the competition. It wasn't long before it was time for Lingshan and the others to go on stage again, and their performances were as dazzling as usual. Lingshan, Qintian, and the others won all 3 battles, getting the chance to participate in the test early. As for Kang Xiaobo and the others, they didn't win all 3 battles, but they managed to get 2 wins and 1 loss. The situation was pretty good. The only exception was Ying Ziyu. She was the only one who didn't have a good future. After 3 rounds, she won 1 and lost 2, and the only win was from Yu Bing in the first round. The other 2 were easily defeated by the Archaic Alliance disciples, and she couldn't use the counter moves Lin Yi taught her at all. If this continued, things wouldn't look good for her. Ziyu Yu. Facing a situation like this, even Lin Yi didn't know what to do. He'd already done everything he could to come up with a counter move for the sects, and they only needed to memorize it in the exam room. But with Ziyu's situation, he couldn't possibly take the test himself, could he? Lin Yi bro, am I useless? Ziyu smiled bitterly. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat as he looked at her. Although the girl was still forcing a smile on her face, tears were already welling up in her eyes. She was just trying her best not to let them fall. No. Lin Yi shook his head, feeling a little heartache as he looked at Ziyu pretending to be strong. He regretted it a little. At her age, he should have let her stay in the common world and enjoy her school life, but now he wanted to bring her to the archaic trials. Wasn't he being too hasty? It seems like I'll have to stay here alone this time, Ziyu said desolately. When Lin Yi brought up the idea of letting everyone participate in the archaic trials, she was the one who was the most eager to go. But from the looks of things now, she basically had no fate with the archaic trials anymore. Don't give up, you still have a chance. Lin Yi comforted. Lin Yi bro, you don't need to comfort me. I know my situation the best. It's impossible for me to win the next 2 rounds. Ziyu smiled bitterly. She could have placed her hopes on luck, since if she were lucky enough to get her own people in the next 2 rounds, she'd be guaranteed a spot in the test. It was a shame that Lingshan, Wu Qintian, and the others who'd won all 3 rounds had gotten the spot prematurely, and in order to prevent them from affecting the fairness of the test, they weren't allowed to participate in the lot drawing anymore. The only people who had a chance were Xiaobo and a few others. Not only was the chance very low, but even if they did get their people, Ziyu wouldn't be able to ask Kang Xiaobo and the others to go easy on her. After all, even Kang Xiaobo and the others wouldn't be guaranteed a spot in the trials. Ling Shan and the others looked at each other. They wanted to comfort her, but they didn't know what to say. They knew that Ziyu had always been a headstrong person, and if they didn't say something right, not only wouldn't they be able to comfort her, it might even have the opposite effect. Nothing is impossible. You can't look at things from a pessimistic perspective. Although it's a pity that you've lost 2 matches in a row, if you look at it from an optimistic perspective, everything will be fine as long as you win 2 more matches, right? Plus, this situation isn't too bad. You might not be able to think of a solution on your own, but don't forget about me. Linny smiled. You have a solution, Linny bro? Ziyu's eyes lit up, but she shook her head. It's useless, I'm too useless. You've already taught me all the moves, but I can't help but get nervous when I'm in the field, and I forget everything when I'm nervous. I can't use any moves at all, I'm just a piece of trash. Chapter 5199. Solo training? Ziyu paused, surprised. Is there enough time to do it now? The counter moves they learned before were just a last-minute effort, and they only used 3 days to learn them all. But they were in the middle of the tournament, and even if they had 2 days in between, it was only enough for them to recover their chi and stamina. Where would they find the time for solo training? There's enough time, of course there's enough time. This isn't something new, just a revision of the counter moves I taught you before. Linny signaled for Ziyu to get on the boat and rowed it back to the Blue Cloud Sect's private island. Revision? Would that work? Ziyu wasn't confident at all. She was a fearless person, but things like exams were the only thing she couldn't do. This competition was like a test to her, and her mind was blank the moment she entered the exam room. Even if she memorized the counter moves now, it wouldn't work when the time came. Don't worry, this isn't just revision. It's made for you. Linny smiled mysteriously. He'd found the problem now, and it wasn't hard to come up with a solution. Really? Ziyu only recovered now. She wasn't confident in herself, but in Lin Yi. If Lin Yi dared to say something like this, then he must have a way to help her get through this. On the other side, everyone watched as the two rowed away. Lingshan couldn't help but worry. Ziyu will be fine, right? Don't worry, she'll be fine with boss personally. We just need to wait and see, Shintian said without hesitation. The others looked at each other and smiled. Since Lin Yi said he'd bring everyone to the primordial trials, he wouldn't leave Ziyu behind. He'd never disappoint them, not in the past, not in the future. In the 4th round of the competition, Xue Jianfeng, Lin Yi, and the others who had won all 3 rounds had qualified early. There were also some who had lost all 3 rounds and were eliminated early. Adding on the losers who had been heavily injured in the previous rounds, there were clearly fewer disciples participating in this round. For example, there were 8 people in the last round, but only 5 were left in this round. Without Xue Jianfeng and Lin Yi, this round wasn't as exciting as before. Lung Lung and Duanmu were the only ones left. The former was a genius disciple who almost used prison formation to turn the tables on a golden core master, and the latter was a senior sister who was slowly showing off the strength of Yiling's sect. Both of them were beauties too, so it was a rare sight to see. Unfortunately, the 2 women did not encounter each other this time. However, what surprised everyone was that whether it was Cold or Duanmu, they should be considered as the top existence among the remaining perfected foundation establishment experts. However, in the end, both of them were defeated at the same time. The 2 great perfection of foundation establishment realm disciples who had drawn them had already accepted their fate after learning the results of the draw. After all, the strength that the 2 women had displayed earlier was indeed not to be underestimated. Ordinary experts of the same level basically had no chance of winning against them. Therefore, the 2 of them had only held on to the belief that they would definitely lose and had given it their all. They didn't think that they'd actually win. Not only were the bystanders flabbergasted, but even they themselves found it hard to believe. They felt that this victory was like a free win. It took them a long time to react and they were overjoyed. What's going on? Ling Shan and the others looked at each other. It was a pity that Lin Yi wasn't there, or he could explain it to them. Maybe she's exhausted too much chi in the first 3 rounds and her stamina is low. Xianijia looked at them and said thoughtfully. Other than the silent Bing Wuqing, he should be the one who could see the situation the most, other than Lung Lung and Duanmu. He was right. Lung Lung's strength was far from being consolidated because of the 2 consecutive breakthroughs in the first 2 rounds. Moreover, she used the extreme version of prison formation for the first time against Xue Jianfeng in the last round. This was a trump card that consumed a lot of chi and stamina. She didn't feel anything because she was excited at that time, but now the drawbacks were fully manifested. If she had been able to use prison drawing, there would have been almost no reason for her to lose the match just now. However, because she did not have enough true chi, she had a very obvious flaw when she used this move, which was why her opponent had turned defeat into victory. It was the same for Duanmuyu. Whether it was falling leaves signifying autumn or a mountain leaf, they were both powerful moves that consumed a lot of chi and stamina. Moreover, every time she used it in a short period of time, it would consume more than the last time. Moreover, her opponent wasn't weak, so it was understandable that she lost in the end. The two girls behaved the same after losing the battle. They didn't say a word and walked to an empty space at the side and began to meditate to recover their chi. Both of them had 2 wins and 2 losses now. The next 5th round of the competition would directly affect their future, so they had to make the best use of their time to recuperate and prepare for the last battle. Coincidentally, since Lung Ling and Duanmuyu lost one after another, the 4th round of the competition seemed to be cursed. All kinds of dark horses kept appearing one after another. They obviously had the upper hand in strength, but they kept failing miserably. It was so strange. Xianijia wasn't surprised about this. As a senior elder of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, he had presided over at least 80, if not 100, big or small competitions. He knew that in the middle and late stage of the competition, a lot of physical and chi would be consumed, and the spirit would unconsciously relax due to exhaustion. Therefore, it was the easiest time for accidents to happen. It wasn't strange for dark horses to appear again and again. A day later, it was finally the turn of the group in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm in the 4th round of the competition. As the number of participating disciples decreased significantly due to various reasons, the process of the competition sped up a lot. The first round still needed 2 whole days to finish, but in the 4th round, it only took less than a day to finish all the previous matches. If Xianijia hadn't deliberately left some time for everyone to rest and recuperate between each group's matches, the time would be even shorter. After all, not only the number of matches was far less than before, but because everyone deliberately reduced the probing, the time of each match was also greatly shortened. This was a matter of course. Chapter 5200. Lin Yi said he was going to train Ziyu for 2 days, but it wasn't even 2 days and it was already time to draw lots. Didn't that mean that they'd forfeit and be eliminated? But it's too late now, right? Man, we've miscalculated. Yu Bing frowned. They should have realized this a long time ago, but because they trusted Lin Yi too much, they thought that something like this would be within Lin Yi's calculations. They forgot that the timing wasn't controllable, and even Lin Yi couldn't have predicted that it would be the Foundation Establishment Group's turn so soon. No matter what, I'll go find Boss and the others now. As long as I don't get the first match, it should be fine. My luck shouldn't be that bad, right? Qintian left. But before he could take 2 steps, Xianijia announced, Foundation Establishment Early Phase, First Match, Common World Ing Ziyu against Snow Sword Sect's Luo Shaxing. What's going on? Qintian almost fell flat on his face, and Lingshan and the others all had a pained expression on their faces. What should they do? At this time, Luo Shaxing was already walking onto the stage with a ferocious aura, looking at Lingshan and the others with a vicious smile. He'd lost to Lingshan's miraculous counterattack in the first round, and Lingshan's attack had indeed hit his vitals, but it wasn't that heavy. Luo Shaxing had already recovered by the time the second round started, and he didn't meet anyone from Lin Yi's group in the next 3 rounds. Among all the Foundation Establishment disciples from the Archaic Alliance, Luo Shaxing's strength wasn't top-notch, but he was still a disciple of the Snow Sword sect who could control the snow aspect. His strength wasn't to be underestimated, and as long as his luck wasn't too bad, he could beat most of his opponents. But perhaps because of Lingshan, Luo Shaxing's strength had recovered, but his condition was affected quite a bit. He won 1 and lost 1 in the next 2 rounds, and while he wasn't directly eliminated, he had 1 foot on the edge of a cliff. There was no going back now. What a coincidence. It's a shame that it's not Lingshan, but at least it gives me a chance to get my revenge. I can't wait. Luo Shaxing looked at Lingshan, a little regretful. He couldn't accept losing to Lingshan like that in the first round, and he'd been dreaming of meeting Lingshan again in the next few rounds, but he didn't have the chance. He could only vent his anger on Ziyu now. Lingshan and the others glared at him furiously. If it weren't for the tournament, they'd definitely teach this guy a lesson. If it weren't for Lingshan going easy on him last time, he'd be a dead man by now. How dare he talk big like that? That was what he said, but it'd be a lie to say that he wasn't worried at all. With Ziyu's performance in the last few fights, This Luo Shixing wouldn't stand a chance against her, especially since this guy had a grudge in his heart. He wouldn't let Ziyu give up so easily. The tournament begins. Disciples, please enter the stage. Xianijia saw that Ziyu wasn't entering the stage, so he turned around to urge her, but he didn't see her anywhere. He'd been interacting with Lingshan's group for the past few months, and he could still recognize her. He blinked. Where's Ziyu? Under normal circumstances, all the disciples would wait at the side, no matter if it was time to go up or not. Even if they won all 3 fights and got the right to go up early, other than the heavily injured ones, most of them would stay here to watch the others fight. This was the first time someone like Ziyu, who was clearly uninjured, had disappeared. Lingshan and the others looked at each other. She's going back for a bit, but she'll be back soon. Please wait for a bit. All right. Xianijia nodded. This might not work if it was someone else, but Ziyu was Lin Yi's follower. She was his senior master after all, and he had to give her some face. Luo Shixing snorted discontentedly, but he dared not say anything more. He was not a big shot like Shui Jianfeng. He was merely a disciple in the early stage of Foundation establishment realm. How would he dare to put on airs in front of Xianijia, a gold core stage master uncle? Therefore he could only endure it. Lingshan and the others breathed a sigh of relief, quickly sending Qintian to inform Lin Yi and Ziyu. However, this place was quite far from the Blue Cloud Sex Island, and they had to row a boat. They wouldn't be able to get there without 2 incense sticks worth of time. Even Xianijia wouldn't be able to waste this much time, so he had to try his best. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the other disciples of the Archaic Alliance were getting impatient. If it was a big shot like Lin Yi who made them wait for so long, it would be understandable. However, it was just a weak little girl. Xianijia, as the leader of the team and the judge, was being so biased. Wasn't he being too selfish? Master Xn, we've waited long enough, right? If she doesn't come, are we supposed to keep waiting like this? Luo Shixing finally asked. Yeah, according to the rules, anyone who doesn't show up on time forfeits. Waiting for an incense stick's worth of time is the limit. The flowers will wilt if we wait any longer, the others all agreed. That's. Xianijia looked at Lingshan and the others, troubled. From his perspective, he had tried his best, and he could only give a helpless expression. Since that's the case, then I'll announce that Ziyu has been late for too long and will forfeit. Before he could finish, Ziyu's voice came from not far away. Sorry I'm late. That's great. Seeing Lin Yi and Ziyu appear together, Lingshan and the others let out a breath of relief. Even Xianijia was the same. Only Luo Shixing was a little disappointed. He wanted to use this chance to vent his anger on Ziyu, but in comparison the test was more important. If he could win without any effort, then he'd be able to maintain his peak condition for the 5th round, and he'd have a much higher chance of entering the test. I'll be going then. Ziyu was no longer as nervous as before, smiling confidently as she raised her hand to Lin Yi. Okay, good luck. Lin Yi high-fived her. Chapter 5201. Humph, she's just a flower vase with no strength at all. Where's that confidence coming from? Luo Shixing curled his lips in disdain. Ever since he lost to Lingshan, he'd been paying close attention to Lin Yi's group. After all, they were very likely to be the opponents they'd be drawn against, and he'd seen their performance from start to finish. If it were Lingshan and the others, he'd be worried, but since it was Ziyu, the weakest of them all, there was no need to worry. Ziyu will be fine, right? Lingshan worried. She knew Luo Shixing's strength the best. He wasn't an easy opponent at the early phase of Foundation establishment. If she didn't fully grasp the counter moves Lin Yi taught her, she'd have a hard time. Ziyu she. Lin Yi paused and smiled meaningfully. She's actually quite strong. Lingshan and the others paused, looking at each other. Lin Yi's standards had always been very high, and he'd never even commented on their performance like this before. Could Ziyu be an unparalleled genius for him to say that she was strong? At this time the battle officially started. What surprised everyone was that Ziyu didn't follow the tactics and counter moves Lin Yi taught them, choosing to go on the offensive right from the start. This scene didn't just surprise everyone, even Luo Shixing was shocked. But then he sneered. If you want to take the initiative, then you need to have the strength to do so. Do you have it? Luo Shixing smiled coldly, and his signature weapon, the slaughter blade, came slashing down. Ziyu, however, was expecting it and dodged to the side, throwing a punch at his face. Luo Shixing was shocked Ziyu was hitting his life point. How was that possible? If it was the snow-killing style, the most famous style of the Snow Sword faction, it was still acceptable for someone to lock onto his vital point. However, the traceless snow that he was using now was just an inconspicuous style. How could this woman have predicted it? She couldn't say that it was her spontaneous reaction, could she? That reaction speed was just too astonishing. Moreover, could an ordinary person study the moves of the Snow Sword School so thoroughly? Even the disciples of the Snow Sword School themselves might not be able to lock onto the vital points of the moves so quickly, right? Luckily, Traceless Snow Ground's flaw wasn't as obvious as Snow Kill, and Luo Shaxing quickly changed his move. Ziyu didn't, still hitting the same spot, but Luo Shaxing easily blocked it. Does this woman not know how to be flexible? Luo Shaxing paused, and before he could react, Ziyu followed up with another attack, this one even faster than before. But this time she didn't lock onto the life gate. Luo Shaxing quickly blocked again, but he didn't even have time to stop before Ziyu's third attack came even faster. She didn't lock onto the life gate as well, and it looked like a normal body part. Why did she choose such unimportant positions? What is this woman doing? Luo Shaxing was a bit stunned. Ziyu's attacks were abnormally fast, but they were easy to block. There was no threat at all. It was just that he had failed against Lingshan before, and even if Luo Shaxing looked down on Ziyu from the bottom of his heart, he didn't dare let his guard down against this random series of attacks. With the mentality of playing it safe, he started to defend. 7 to 8 moves in a row was the same, and Luo Shaxing was getting impatient. He'd seen through Ziyu already, and as weak as she was, everything before was just a bluff. With a thought, Luo Shaxing started to counterattack, but before he could even do it, Ziyu was already going for his life gate. He almost pissed his pants, going back to his defensive stance. This is... Lingshan was a bit weirded. Looking at Ziyu's actions, she seemed to be using the counter moves Lin Yi taught her, but not completely. Other than the first move and this one, the rest weren't specific to the Snow Sword sect. Other than the Snow Sword sect, Ziyu seems to be using the counter moves of the other ancient sects as well. Boss, what's going on? Yu Bing finally saw what was going on and asked softly. Chen Tian and the others came to a realization. No wonder Ziyu's moves looked so familiar, they were the moves of the ancient sects, but they were all mixed together so it didn't look like they belonged to the same sect. As you can see, it's a mixed version of the ancient sect's counter moves. Lin Yi smiled. This was something he'd come up with just for Ziyu, since she'd shown that she was a test addict. Getting her to use a counter move on the spot like the others was a very hard thing to do, and so he came up with this idea. He didn't need to think too much about it, he just needed to use all the moves in the sparring, and it'd be much easier that way. But is this going to work? Lingshan said, confused. Ziyu did seem to be able to scare the opponent, but she didn't hurt him at all. She'd be seen through sooner or later anyway, and this stance was just a waste of chi and stamina. She didn't see any chance of winning at all. Yeah, when you're not as strong as the opponent, it's very easy to see through Ziyu's moves, so you have to defend and counterattack. Isn't that what you taught us, boss? Chen Tian said. That's normal, but take a good look at Ziyu's movements. Lin Yi reminded. Everyone looked closely at Ziyu's performance, and Yu Bing reacted after a while. She seems to be lowering the power of her moves to increase her speed. More accurately, she has no choice but to lower the power of her moves. That's right. As the saying goes, there's nothing that can't be defeated by speed. Speed doesn't just refer to the speed of one's movements, but also the speed of one's attacks. When the speed of one's attacks reaches a certain level, the opponent won't be able to react in time, achieving the goal of attacking instead of defending. So, I taught her a whole new fighting style, Instant Strike. Chapter 5202. Instant Strike. Everyone was shocked. Yes, it's a fighting style that ignores everything else and focuses on speed. Once you get caught up in a fight like this, you won't be able to fight back normally. You'll only be able to attack halfway and the opponent will have already attacked. Lin Yi said. Wow, that sounds really strong. Everyone was shocked, but then they started complaining. Boss is too biased, isn't he? He's only teaching Ziyu something this strong and not us. Haha, I can teach you anytime if you want, but it's just a fighting style. It's not suitable for everyone. Lin Yi said as he looked at Ziyu. He didn't know much about the others, but this girl's speed was surprisingly fast, as if she was born for instant strike. The two were still fighting, and it was as Lin Yi said, Luo Shaxing was completely locked down by Ziyu. His life-killer blade couldn't unleash its full power when he was in close range, and Ziyu was using a close-range instant attack. Even if it was just a fledgling form, it was enough to catch someone off guard for a foundation establishment practitioner like that. Instant strike really is effective. That guy can't find a chance to fight back at all. He's really being led by the nose. Qintian's eyes lit up. Yu Bing, however, still frowned. That's true, but Ziyu isn't really threatening him yet. He'll run out of stamina soon, won't he? Instant Strike is a fighting style that allows you to gain the upper hand as long as you're in close range, but the downside is that each attack will be greatly weakened, and the stamina and chi will be used up quickly. It's not suitable for a long fight. Lin Yi said. Doesn't that mean Ziyu's in danger? Ling Shan said worriedly. You're wrong. I suddenly realized that Ziyu has a very strong trait yesterday, very suitable for Instant Strike. You'll understand if you keep watching? Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. A very strong trait? Everyone paused, staring at Ziyu's performance. They didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, but slowly their faces changed. This fight had been going on for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, and with Ziyu's speed, she shouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Her attacks should be slowing down, but she was acting the exact opposite. Not only that, but from Luo Shaxing's movements, his attacks were much stronger than before. How could that be? Everyone was puzzled. The more he fights, the stronger he gets. Ziyu seems to have this type of constitution. Lin Yi explained with a smile. Normal people would get weaker and weaker as they used up their stamina, but there was a type of person who could unleash strength far beyond normal. Ziyu looked weak and petite, but she had this kind of strong body. It wasn't a coincidence that she was a delinquent girl in the past. It was in her genes. A constitution that can unleash strength in the later stages? Everyone was shocked. Just when they were shocked, the fight had reached its climax. As Ziyu's attacks got faster and faster, her attacks got stronger and stronger, and Luo Shaxing, who had been on the defensive all this time, was starting to lose his strength. In just a short period of time, he'd already been hit 5 times. Even though his protective Jin Qi had blocked most of the power, he had still accumulated quite a bit of damage from being hit by the consecutive attacks. At this moment he was already slightly injured. Even though the injury was not serious, it had more or less affected his movements. This was the start of a vicious cycle. It looks like the result will be out soon. Xianijia nodded, a little surprised. The situation was clear now. Ziyu's unexpected performance had given her the upper hand, and if Luo Shaxing didn't bring out a powerful counterattack, the battle would be over soon. Luo Shaxing was well aware of this fact. Unfortunately, this was the first time he had seen a close-range instantaneous attack. For a moment he didn't know how to respond. Facing such a fast-paced close-range attack, he couldn't even use a complete move, let alone counterattack. To be defeated by a weak little girl, how could such a stupid thing happen to me? Seeing that he was being forced into a corner step by step, Luo Shaxing was finally ready to risk everything. Lin Yi's lips curled up at this. Close-range attack was a very strong fighting style, but it wasn't invincible. As long as he chose the right strategy, he'd be able to deal with it. There were 2 things he needed to do in order to deal with a close-range attack. 1, he couldn't let the opponent get close to him easily, and 2, he had to open up the distance as soon as the opponent got close, even if he had to pay the price of getting hurt. However, Luo Shaxing didn't do these 2 things at all. He didn't even realize that risking everything at this time coincided with the second point. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Without enough patience and means, he could only rely on a moment of desperation to break through. Close combat, a fighting method that was highly respected on Heaven Stage Island, was simply too weak. Shaoxing didn't think too much in the situation, and used the snow kill style all of a sudden. Ever since he lost to Ling Shan in the first round, the weakness of this signature move of the Snow's Word School was known to everyone, and so he had to be extremely careful every time he used it, or he'd be countered easily. The spectators were speechless. All Ziyu had to do now was attack his throat, the obvious opening, and the fight would be over. This wasn't an easy thing to do under normal circumstances, but with Ziyu's close-range skills, seizing the opportunity was a piece of cake. But Ziyu didn't seem to care at all, continuing her rhythm, attacking all parts of Luo Shaxing's body except the throat. This little girl actually saw through it. Instead of being happy, Luo Shaxing was shocked. His desperate move was just a facade. He wanted to use the snow-killing style to bait his opponent. In fact, he did not intend to use the snow-killing style at all. From the moment he started to use it, he was ready to change his move. Chapter 5203. As for whether or not Ziyu herself noticed it, that wasn't certain. But even if she didn't, she wouldn't care. After all, she was the type that focused on controlling the initiative. Even if it meant missing the opponent's opening, she couldn't follow the opponent's rhythm unless she had absolute confidence in killing them in one hit. This was the first rule Lin Yi emphasized when he taught her how to do it. Bam! Just as Luo Shaxing was playing around, Ziyu's barrage of attacks knocked him down on the ground. Even so, she didn't stop, continuing her attacks on him without any intention of holding back. How cruel! Everyone's eyelids twitched. As long as Luo Shaxing didn't admit defeat or faint, the battle wasn't over yet. Even if he was knocked down, he could still chase after him. But normally, people would stop when the fight was over, and it was rare to see someone like Ziyu chasing after him. Even Lin Yi and the others felt a chill running down their spine. As expected, Ziyu was a ruthless person deep down in her bones. After a while, he looked at Luo Shaxing, who was about to be beaten to death without a chance to fight back, and Enchanted couldn't watch it anymore. Alright, this duel ends here. I declare Ziyu the winner and Luo Shaxing 1 win, 3 losses. He's eliminated. Ah? That's it? Ziyu pulled her hand back, still looking like she hadn't had enough yet. That's enough, save some strength for the next round. Lin Yi couldn't help but sweat as he looked at the pitiful Luo Shaxing on the ground. Meeting an opponent like Ziyu really was the worst thing he'd ever experienced in his life. Alright, but Lin Yi bro, the close-range attack you taught me is really good. I feel like I'm burning up, I can't stop. Ziyu hugged Lin Yi's arm excitedly. Everyone smiled when they heard this. This was probably not the effect of the instant close-range attack, but purely due to her own special physique. Ziyu's victory was a good start for everyone, and Yu Bing, Xiaobo, and the others all passed as expected. They all got the right to enter the Archean trials with 3 wins and 1 loss. With this, Lin Yi's group only had 2 people left to fight in the 5th round, Ziyu and Cold. But with Ziyu's current condition, there shouldn't be anything to worry about in the next round. At least at the Foundation establishment level, close-range attack was a very troublesome way of fighting. Most people wouldn't be able to react in time, and without the guidance of a master, no one would be able to block Ziyu's close-range attack. Right now, Lung Lung was the one who was a little worried. Although she was very strong now, not only did she possess the Shattered Ice physique, but she had also developed a powerful move such as prison drawing. She had just advanced to the Foundation perfected stage. At the same time, she was facing the predicament of insufficient vital energy. If she could not recover in time, she might repeat the mistakes of the 4th round. That would be troublesome. Lin Yi bro, why don't you give Cold Sis a private training session too? Wouldn't that be great? Ziyu suggested. She was a living example, and with Lin Yi's level and judgment, the effect of a private training was unquestionable. Sure. Lin Yi nodded and turned to look at Lung Lung. Based on the current situation, there's still a lot of room for improvement, whether it's prison formation or other aspects. We should be able to gain something with targeted special training, what do you think? That. Cold hesitated and shook her head firmly. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I haven't even stabilized my Foundation establishment level yet, and I haven't mastered ground prison yet, so I think we should leave the training for later. This time, I want to overcome it with my own hard work. Alright then, I believe you. Good luck. Lin Yi patted her shoulder lightly. Although it was a little risky to do so, he felt very gratified. Just like what Cold had said, it was better not to bite off more than one could chew. It was commendable for her to realize this. In the 5th round of the trial, no one chose to challenge someone of a higher level. After all, those who stayed until this round were disciples who had gone through 4 rounds of intense battles, with 2 wins and 2 losses. There was no room for accidents anymore. Instead of choosing to challenge someone of a higher level, they might as well participate in the 5th round. At least this way the difficulty would be lower, and they would have a higher chance of qualifying for the archaic trial. There were only 4 Foundation establishment level complete practitioners left, and when Enchanted drew out the first group, everyone was shocked. Their eyes focused on the 2 in the field, Cold against Duan Muyu. Looks like I've gotten myself into a good show. Shui Jianfeng smiled with great interest. After a few days of recuperation, the frostbite left by Cold's extreme version of confinement prison had completely healed. However, because of this, he couldn't be present to supervise the battle these few days. Hence, he couldn't specifically target Lin Yi's group. Otherwise, they wouldn't have passed so smoothly. Fortunately, the result of the draw did not disappoint him. Although he had to admit that Cold's strength was indeed not to be underestimated, especially that prison drawing was even more shocking. It was difficult for an average master of the same level to contend against it. However, Duan Muyu was not an ordinary character. Moreover, from the previous match, Cold's condition was not considered good. The odds of winning against Duan Muyu in this match was not high. If Duan Muyu could eliminate Cold, although it was barely satisfactory for Shui Jianfeng, it could be considered as a consolation. At this moment, not only Shui Jianfeng, but the rest of the crowd also revealed an expression of watching a good show. After all, this was a rare showdown. Both sides were the hot topic, especially since this was the final showdown. No matter what the result was, one side was bound to be eliminated on the spot. Who would it be? Please. Cold took the lead and bowed slightly to Duan Muyu. Please. Duan Muyu, on the other hand, made a gesture of invitation. She looked calm and composed on the surface, but she was secretly on guard in her heart. She warned herself that no matter what, she could not let the opponent use the painted confinement. Even Shui Jianfeng, a beginner-stage gold core expert, almost suffered a calamity. If she was the one trapped, then everything would be over. After the greeting, the atmosphere in the field suddenly began to become extremely tense. The crowd at the side did not even dare to breathe, quietly waiting for the two to officially start. Chapter 5204. She wants to end the fight quickly? Duan Muyu was shocked, but she was not surprised. Since she had already run out of true qi in the previous round, it was impossible for her to fully recover even after 2 days of rest. Especially when facing a strong opponent, ending the battle as soon as possible could be said to be the only choice. In fact, it wasn't just Cold. Duan Muyu had the same thought. She was facing the same predicament as Cold. If she couldn't think of a way to end the fight quickly, it would be hard to predict how the situation would develop. Bam! Both of them launched their kicks at the same time, but neither of them touched the other because they were aiming for the other's vitals. This had nothing to do with the Ming men of the moves. It was a direct way of exchanging lives for lives. Everyone gasped in unison, stunned. Even if the outcome of this fight was directly related to the qualification to enter the Archean trials, there was no need to fight so desperately right from the start, was there? Ling Shan and the other's hearts skipped a beat. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Fortunately, both of them didn't really exchange lives for lives. They both chose to pull back their legs at the last moment. Just when everyone let out a sigh of relief, the same scene happened again. Everyone's hearts were in their throats again. They only relaxed when the two of them separated again. It was like a roller coaster. This isn't good. I'm afraid it'll go against the strategy of ending the fight quickly if this goes on. Duan Muyu looked at Cold, who was charging at her with a serious face. She frowned as she used the method of exchanging lives for lives to force her to retreat. She had no other choice. She didn't dare to take Cold's moves head-on because she was afraid of the legendary Ice Shatter physique. Otherwise, even if she had chi protection, she would be gradually affected. Once her speed was limited, she would be trapped. Therefore, she could only use such a method to force Cold to retreat. However, it would gradually evolve into a battle of physical strength and vital energy. The situation would go out of control after a while. If the situation was still the same, she might not be able to hold back her attack and it would really turn into a mutual destruction. Seeing that Cold was attacking again, Duan Muyu changed her strategy. A withered leaf fell from her palm and she disappeared. The bleak autumn atmosphere instantly swept across the field. The fall of a leaf signified the beginning of autumn. Here comes the show. Everyone's spirits were lifted. According to Duan Muyu's previous habits, after falling leaves indicates autumn, would be followed by a leaf like a mountain, and the winner would be decided soon. Unexpectedly, at the same moment, a bone-chilling coldness enveloped the entire place, and the source was Lung Lung. Prison on the ground? Everyone was shocked again and they looked at each other. But we can't even see Duan Muyu's figure. Even so, he can still use prison of drawn ground? Furthermore, it covers such a large area. Isn't this too exaggerated? Although it's a prison with herself as the target. Cold is really going all out this time. Lin Yi could not help but smile when he saw that. In theory, prison on the ground would only be used when the opponent was locked. However, under special circumstances, it could also target Cold herself like what she was doing now. The shattered ice constitution had a magnifying effect on this, which was enough to expand the range of prison on the ground by several times. However, even Cold herself would suffer from frostbite, just that it would not be as serious as the average person. Everyone had yet to understand what was going on, but for safety's sake, Enchanted once again led the crowd to retreat a good distance. Everyone only stopped when they were almost at the shore, for fear of being accidentally hurt by Cold's prison on the ground. Cold's surroundings were empty, and not a single figure could be found within a radius of 100 meters. However, everyone knew that Duan Muyu must be hiding in this open space, waiting for the opportunity to kill in one hit. However, where was she? Everyone, including Enchanted, was trying their best to find Duan Muyu's figure. However, it was destined to be useless. Duan Muyu had used it at least 3 times in the first 4 rounds of the competition. Unless she took the initiative to show herself. Otherwise, even a beginner gold core expert like Xianijia would not be able to locate her position. If it was really that easy to be broken, Yi Luoji of Autumn would not have become the signature of Yiling sect. Of course, Lin Yi was the only exception. Yi Luoji of Autumn could deceive beginner gold core experts, but it would be too fake to deceive someone at his level. It was a pity that Cold was not Lin Yi. Everyone could not detect Duan Muyu's position, and neither could she. That was why she used prison on herself. Otherwise she would not have to take such a risk. This Cold is really strong. Duan Muyu frowned when she saw this scene. She had indeed concealed herself with the help of the fallen leaves of autumn, but she could only hide from the other party's senses. She could clearly feel the bone-chilling coldness. In fact, because of the bleak autumn, she could feel it much more clearly than others. This bone-chilling coldness could really kill someone. This was not surprising. What really surprised Duan Muyu was that the power of prison on the ground could be raised to such a level in just 3 moves. It almost completely overturned her previous judgment. Duan Muyu was definitely one of the people who observed the battle between Cold and Xue Jianfeng the most attentively. After all, both of them were very likely to be strong opponents that she would have to face. As the leading senior sister of Yiling sect, Duan Muyu's observation skills were absolutely top-notch. This was the minimum requirement to enter Yiling sect. Although she had only seen it once, she could already see some of the tricks of prison on the ground. Duan Muyu knew very well that this was a powerful killer move that needed to be laid down. The more laid down, the more powerful it would be. It was also because of this judgment that Duan Muyu was very determined to end the battle quickly from the beginning. Not only could she avoid the risk of overdrafting her vital energy and physical strength, but she could also restrain her opponent's most feared prison on the ground. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. If it was not for the fact that her Yi Luoji of Autumn also needed a certain amount of time to accumulate, Duan Muyu would definitely have used it immediately. Of course, it was within the acceptable range if she could only deal with her opponent for 3 moves. However, she did not expect Cold's prison on the ground to reach such a level after only 3 moves. It was even stronger than when she was fighting against Xue Jianfeng. In that case, could it be that her previous judgment was completely wrong? Duan Muyu's confidence could not help but waver. After all her speculations were based on appearances. To be honest, it was not easy to come to such a conclusion after only 1 observation. Unfortunately, she did not know the principle of prison on the ground. Chapter 5205. Even so, Duan Muyu did not reveal any flaws. She adjusted her strategy in an instant and prepared to snatch the attack. Falling leaves of autumn and 1 mountain-like leaf, this was the most common and most threatening combo move. It was also Duan Muyu's original plan. However, just like the falling leaves of autumn, this powerful and overbearing move needed time to charge up. Everyone knew about this routine, but it was still impossible to defend against it because no one knew where and when the attack of 1 mountain-like leaf would come from. The problem now was that she was affected by the bone-chilling cold of the painted ground prison. Duan Muyu discovered that the vital energy in her body was beginning to show signs of stagnation. If this continued, she would not be able to use her mountain leaf again. Instead of sitting on the ground and waiting for death, she might as well give it her all. A thin iron leaf appeared above Lung Lung's head out of thin air. It pressed down with an incomparably heavy and majestic aura. 1 mountain-like leaf. Boom. The iron leaf was only the size of a palm, but it left a clear leaf print the size of half a basketball court on the ground. The depth of the print was as high as a person's height. It was astounding. Ah! Ling Shan and the others screamed when they saw this. Didn't this mean that Lung Lung was crushed to death by the 1 mountain-like leaf? However, they immediately breathed a sigh of relief because Lung Lung had already rushed out from the leaf print. Although she was obviously injured, judging from her current state, the injury should not be too serious. Is this guy made of iron? Someone could not help but exclaim. The others were also confused. They had seen the power of 1 mountain-like leaf with their own eyes. A foundation perfected expert was blown away on the spot. Even if Lung Lung's strength was stronger than a foundation perfected expert, she should not be able to jump around after taking on the 1 mountain-like leaf. This was too ridiculous. Xue Jianfeng snorted when he heard that. Most people could not understand the scene just now, but as a Golden Core Realm expert he saw it clearly. Duan Muyu's 1 mountain-like leaf was indeed powerful. A normal foundation perfected expert would be courting death if he took it head-on. It was the same for Lung Lung. However, Cold Lung did not take the attack head-on. Instead, she had already stepped on the ground and shrunk herself before the mountain-like leaf came crashing down. Instead of saying that the mountain-like leaf's power had landed on her body, it would be more accurate to say that most of the power had been absorbed by the ground. That was why she was able to sustain such a light injury. Shui Jianfeng secretly felt that it was a pity. He couldn't wait for Cole to be beaten to death by Duan Muyu. He didn't expect that she actually escaped this calamity. Oh no. Duan Muyu's heart skipped a beat. She had already used up most of her true qi against knowledge of the autumn and mountain of fallen leaves. She had bet most of her chips on this. At the very least, she had to severely injure her opponent before she could take control of the situation. An opening. Lung Lung's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, she rushed forward and gave him a head-on kick. With a bang, Duan Muyu was sent flying. What a pity. Lin Yi shook his head slightly as he witnessed the scene. Lung Lung had grasped the opportunity very well. Duan Muyu's momentary absent-mindedness had indeed exposed a small opening. However, Lung Lung was affected by her prison drawing, so her speed was obviously slower than usual. This gave her opponent a chance to defend himself hastily. Otherwise, the outcome of the battle would have been decided. Lung Lung also felt that it was a pity. Duan Muyu, on the other hand, could not help but secretly feel lucky. Even though she had already used her arms to block her chest before the opponent's kick landed on her, and her protective chi had been strengthened to its peak in an instant, she still received quite a bit of impact. A thin layer of frost was left on both of her arms. In a situation like this, the longer the fight dragged on, the greater the effect of the confinement spell would be. Her flaw earlier was also affected by the confinement spell. After receiving Cold Lung's kick head-on, the freezing effect was magnified infinitely. The white frost was the symbol. At this moment, she could not even feel the existence of both her arms. They were completely frozen. Phew. Lung Lung let out a long breath upon seeing the situation. She was about to give her opponent the final blow. Truth be told, even she could not withstand the powerful freezing effect of the prison drawing. If she continued to delay, she would probably follow in her opponent's footsteps. Should I admit defeat? Lung Lung suddenly stopped moving. There was no enmity between her and Duan Muyu. If it was not necessary, she did not want to deal a heavy blow. Otherwise, it would not only be a matter of elimination for Duan Muyu. It was unknown whether he could fully recover from the severe injury. If there were any sequelae because of this, it would be an endless trouble. No one knew the horror of the prison drawing better than herself. This degree of frostbite was not something that could be easily cured. What nonsense are you talking about? Duan Muyu glanced at her. A trace of determination suddenly flashed across her eyes. The battle has just begun, isn't it? As she spoke, a withered leaf slowly slid out from her palm. Everyone could not help but look at each other when they saw it. Was Duan Muyu still thinking of turning the tables with the falling leaves in autumn? Although his perseverance was commendable, it was too unrealistic, right? Lung Lung was also very puzzled. However, she reacted quickly. From her standpoint, it was already benevolent of her to give her opponent the chance to admit defeat. Since Duan Muyu insisted on fighting till the end, she could only fulfill his wish. Without another word, Lung Lung immediately gave her opponent the final blow. At this moment, both of Duan Muyu's arms were frozen numb. Even the movement of slipping out from the withered leaf seemed very clumsy, let alone fighting back. However, before Lung Lung could land her attack, Duan Muyu's body suddenly erupted with an incomparably strong vitality. As if it had materialized, his entire body was emitting a dazzling light. The withered leaf has turned green? Lin Yi looked at the withered leaf that was slowly falling to the ground in astonishment. At this moment, it had turned emerald green and was full of vitality. This is the withered leaf rejuvenation. Xianijia exclaimed. No wonder he, the junior uncle who led the team at the early stage of the Gold Core realm, was so shocked. In fact, not only him, even Bing Wuqing was visibly moved when she saw this scene. The withered leaf rejuvenation, like the falling leaves in autumn, was one of the few symbolic moves of the Yiling sect. However, it was never something that a foundation-building disciple could master. In theory, only a Gold Core expert could master it. No one would have thought that Duan Muyu, who was only at the foundation-building great completion, had already mastered this move. In this way, even if this woman's strength and potential were not comparable to the shocking geniuses like Lung Lung and Ling Tianyu, there was not much difference. Chapter 5206. Burning her life force in advance and at the same time, A 3-month-long period of weakness. This is the price of rejuvenating withered leaves. She actually went this far just for a duel. Is this woman crazy? Bing Wuqing could not understand. In the eyes of a person who respected absolute rationality, Duanmuyu's actions were meaningless. Indeed, it was extremely likely that Duanmuyu would be able to win this battle by relying on the heaven-defying recovery effect of spring withered leaves. However, so what if she obtained the qualifications to participate in the primeval trials? There were less than 2 months left until the primeval trials. In other words, she would be in a weakened state for at least a month, and participating in the primeval trials in such a state was simply courting death. Instead of that, she might as well admit defeat. Even a child could distinguish the pros and cons of this. Was it just a momentary impulse? In fact, it was no wonder that Bing Wuqing could not understand. Even after her dantian was destroyed by Lin Dongfeng, she had always maintained sufficient rationality. A momentary impulse was an experience she had never experienced before, so naturally she could not understand. However, Exanijia could understand Duanmuyu's feelings. This was probably not a momentary impulse, but something she had long planned. Once the situation turned bad, she would use rejuvenating withered leaves and win at all costs. For Duanmuyu, this was not just because of the primordial trial qualification. More importantly, it was related to the reputation of the entire Yiling sect. She was the leading senior sister of the Yiling sect. If she could not even get the minimum qualification for the trial, wouldn't it be a disgrace to the entire Yiling sect? For the sake of the Yiling sect, Duanmuyu could not lose this duel no matter what. Absolutely not. Bystanders could see things clearly, but Lung Lung had never seen rejuvenating withered leaves before. Before she came to the secular world to train, she was only in the early stage of foundation establishment. Whether it was experience or strength, she was far from her level. In addition, she was from the always mysterious Yiling sect. Before this, she had never even heard of rejuvenating withered leaves, so she was at a loss for what to do. Bang! This time it was Lung Lung who was sent flying. Duanmuyu, who had recovered to his peak state in an instant, was unstoppable. Even without a powerful move like a mountain-like leaf, Lung Lung, who had consumed a lot of energy, was no longer as strong as she wished. Immediately after that, Duanmuyu did not let Cold Lung have the upper hand. He did not give Cold Lung any chance to react at all as he followed up with a series of fierce attacks. Cold Lung was completely at a disadvantage. Exionijia felt a little strange as he watched the two of them intertwining with each other. He could not help but mumble, "Since you've recovered to your peak state with rejuvenation, you should have used powerful moves like Falling Leaves of Autumn and Mountainous Leaf to end the battle as soon as possible. Why did you waste so much effort?" Ever since they had witnessed the power of the prison spell, everyone knew that they could not afford to drag out the fight with cold. Otherwise, the longer the fight dragged on, the more severe the frost damage they would suffer. Duanmuyu might have the upper hand now, but if he could not defeat cold in a short time, he might just fail miserably. Duanmuyu must be well aware of this, but she still insisted on choosing this method. Was there any special purpose? 5 more moves. Duanmuyu silently reminded herself in her heart. She was estimating the effects of the prison drawing on her. If this trend continued, she would probably be frozen again in another 5 moves. At that time, she would really be powerless to reverse the situation. 5 more moves. Cold's judgment was the same as hers. As long as she could withstand 5 moves, she would win. With such judgment, the next 5 moves were destined to be thrilling. If the initial exchange of life for life was just a test, then this time it would be the real deal. The eyelids of the bystanders twitched. Both of them were injured every time they exchanged moves, but they maintained the toughest stance. Neither of them backed down. Once they backed down, they would lose. Are they still women? Why are they even more manly than us pure men? The men were sweating. A battle like this should be exciting, but it was a battle between 2 women. They did not know what to say. This battle is unexpectedly exciting. No matter who wins or loses, Cold should be able to benefit a lot. Lenny nodded. Although he couldn't bear to watch Lung Lung get hurt, he wouldn't interrupt her as long as her life wasn't in danger. After all, there was nothing in this world that could make someone mature faster than an intense battle like this. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged 4 moves. There was only 1 move left to the bottom line of the judgment. There's no other way. Duanmuyu clenched her teeth. Her opponent's tenacity was far beyond her expectation. At this point, she could no longer hold back. She could only use the last of her vital energy to fight with all her might. 1 leaf like a mountain. Cold's heart skipped a beat. In her current state, it was already very difficult for her to withstand the previous 4 moves. It was impossible for her to withstand the one leaf like a mountain. More importantly, her frostbite speed was greatly affected by her painted ground imprisonment. She could not dodge it even if she wanted to. There's no other way. Cold said the same words as Duanmuyu. She did not dodge or dodge. She said in a deep voice as she formed a seal with her hands, "Ice prison mirror, shatter." As soon as she said that, everyone seemed to hear the sound of a huge ice mirror shattering. Then not only in the field but even the entire island's temperature suddenly dropped by a large margin, sending chills down everyone's spine. In the blink of an eye, the initially intense and explosive scene suddenly froze. The mountain-like leaf's powerful attack came to an abrupt halt. Cold and Duanmuyu did not make any follow-up moves at the same time because both of them were frozen stiff. This. Exanigia looked at the scene with his mouth agape. He could not utter a proper sentence. Needless to say, the rest of them were dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. I didn't expect her to use the ice prison mirror. This is really? Linny was also a little shocked and did not know what to say. The ice prison mirror was the follow-up and advanced move of the painted ground imprisonment. The principle was to instantly erupt the bone-chilling coldness of the painted ground imprisonment in a more threatening way. However, as Cold had yet to fully master the painted ground imprisonment, it was only a preliminary idea in Lin Yi's mind. He had yet to figure out the specific way of circulating vital energy. He did not expect Cold to use it directly. Apart from her shocking innate talent, this girl's guts were also boundlessly big. It seems that both of them are frozen stiff and unable to move. Let's announce the result as soon as possible. Otherwise there will be repercussions if they are frozen for too long. That'll be troublesome, said Lin Yi to Exanigia. Chapter 5207. Although Cold and Duanmuyu had lost their ability to move at the same time, both of them were still conscious. It seemed like they were desperately mobilizing the vital chi in their bodies. Under such circumstances, whoever could stand up first would be the winner. As long as they waited patiently, there would definitely be a result. However, it was as Linny had said, if they dragged it on like this, both of them would suffer from side effects from the cold. Compared to the outcome of this battle, the two of them were clearly more important. In this case, the result would be a big problem. After all, there had never been a tie in the trial competition. Moreover, this battle was directly related to the qualification for the Archean trial. Whoever lost would be directly eliminated. Even Exanigia could not come to a conclusion so easily. Needless to say, of course we'll wait for them to stand up on their own. Shui Jianfeng snorted coldly. He did not care about Duanmuyu, but it would be best if he could take this opportunity to cripple Cold. That's impossible. Both Cold and Duanmuyu are genius disciples with outstanding aptitudes. If something really happens to them, let alone Yiling sect, even the upper echelons of your Snowsword sect might not agree to it. Exanigia refuted immediately and said in a deep voice, I'm the person in charge of this trial competition. I have the right to make decisions on the spot. I can't do something as stupid as letting them freeze to death. Shui Jianfeng choked. Exanigia had the absolute right to speak, which he could not compete with. He could only take a step back and said, then what do you want to do? You're not siding with Cold, are you? Although she's from my Snow Sword sect, it's obvious that Duanmuyu had the upper hand earlier. For the sake of fairness, I think Duanmuyu should be the winner. Exanigia was speechless. Of course he was siding with Cold. However, the situation just now was exactly as Shui Jianfeng said. If Cold won, not only would Duanmuyu not agree, but the others would also say that he was sitting on the wrong seat. I don't think so. Why don't you think about who performed the Shattered Ice Prison Mirror? If it wasn't for the power of the Shattered Ice Prison Mirror, it wouldn't have caused such a situation. No matter how you look at it, it should be considered as Cold's counterattack. Lin Yi immediately stood up and argued. Since it was related to Cold's qualification for the Archean trial, he naturally would not sit idly by. Reactive strike? You even froze yourself to this state, do you want me to die of laughter? Shui Jianfeng snorted disdainfully. If it's that funny, why aren't you dying from laughing? Ziyu stuck her tongue out. You. Shui Jianfeng's eyes turned cold, and he subconsciously wanted to make a move to teach this stinky girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. In the end, Lin Yi's stare made his hair stand on end, and he could only resentfully put away this thought. He muttered in his heart, this guy is clearly only at the Great Circle of Foundation establishment, so why does he have such a frightening aura? Since everyone has their reasons, why don't we all vote together? Each leading senior brother from each sect has one vote. Whoever gets the most votes will be the winner, Enchanted said after thinking for a while. I have no objections. Let's let them start healing then. Linny looked at him. If Enchanted was a little more daring, he'd definitely go against everyone's opinions and not use this kind of method to smooth things over. It looked like he didn't offend anyone, but in reality he wasn't getting any favors from either side. The only good thing was that even if the Archean Alliance wanted to pursue the matter, he wouldn't have to take responsibility. After all, this was public opinion. It couldn't be helped. Enchanted was just that kind of person. He looked honest but was actually very sly. He was easy to talk to normally, but when it came to a critical moment, all he could do was to protect himself. Linny wasn't surprised at all. Haha, you really know how to flatter yourself. You're not the leading senior brother of any Archean sect, you don't even have the right to vote. What kind of opinion can you have? Shui Jianfeng took the chance to taunt. Who said I don't? Enchanted snorted and immediately announced, Grandmaster is the most respected person in the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. Of course, Grandmaster has the final say on who the Green Cloud sect of the North Island wants to vote for. He also knew that his suggestion to let everyone vote had unwittingly displeased Lin Yi. At this time, of course, he had to think of a way to remedy the situation. Letting Lin Yi decide was equivalent to voting for Lung Lung in disguise, as a way to express his apology. Alright then, I'll vote for Lung Lung, Lin Yi said bluntly. Some people are really mesmerized by lust, but I'm different. In this case, of course, we have to listen to the public opinion. The Snow Sword faction votes for Duan Muyu, Shui Jianfeng said tit for tat. When he said this, he completely forgot about the existence of Bing Wuqing. It should be known that Bing Wuqing was above him in both strength and status. Moreover, Bing Wuqing's identity in the secular world was the Snow Sword faction's leading senior uncle. She should be the one to make the decision, not Shui Jianfeng. Feeling a chill on his back, Shui Jianfeng suddenly reacted and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Grandmaster Bing must have the same idea, right? Bing Wuqing did not say anything. It was normal for her to express her dissatisfaction with Shui Jianfeng's decision, but it would be a little too obvious if she forcefully voted for Lung Lung. Therefore, she could only maintain her usual style and ignore it. After that, the leading senior brothers of the other primordial sects also expressed their opinions one after another. Soon, Enchanted got the tabulation results. Lung Lung has 7 votes and Duan Muyu has 4 votes. So according to the voting results, Lung Lung should be the winner of this round, Enchanted announced. How could it be? Shui Jianfeng was very surprised. The result was really unexpected. He thought that with the strength of the gold core stage that he had shown before and the prestige he had in the past, he would definitely be able to get hundreds of people to respond to his call. The leading senior brothers of the other primordial sects would definitely curry favor with him. Who would have thought that everyone would go to curry favor with Lin Yi? Admittedly, the strength of the gold core stage that Shui Jianfeng had shown was a little scary, but in the end he was just a beginner gold core stage expert. He could at most be a little deterrent to the crowd, but it was really too much to ask everyone to curry favor with him. Every primordial sect had a group of gold core stage experts. Even if they really did curry favor with Shui Jianfeng, what good would it do them? Chapter 5208. Even if there was no way to rope them in directly, they should at least build a good relationship with them and not become enemies. Otherwise, it would be a huge joke if Lin Yi were to publicize their sect's counter moves in a fit of anger. Lin Yi soon realized what everyone was thinking. Although he never intended to make a fuss about this, it was not a bad thing. Since the result is out, let's call it a day. Lung Lung and Duan Muyu, both of you can focus on recuperating. Don't leave any sequelae, Enchanted said immediately. Hold on, I think this voting is unfair, so it should not be counted. Shui Jianfeng jumped out to object again. Oh? Everyone voted on the spot without any chance to contact each other secretly. I would like to ask, how is it unfair? Enchanted frowned. I think with the level of these voters, not all of them can understand the meaning of this duel. How can the result be counted if a group of people who can't even understand the meaning of the duel be the judges? To ensure the fairness of the result, I suggest we follow the tradition of the Archaic Alliance and let the Golden Core experts vote, Shui Jianfeng said unscrupulously. As soon as he said that, everyone's face darkened. How could he say that their level was not high enough? Wasn't this guy looking down on them too much? However, Shui Jianfeng's words were not baseless. In the past, every competition in the Archaic Alliance was indeed judged by the Golden Core experts. Only they had enough vision to understand the whole meaning of the duel between Foundation Establishment disciples. Otherwise, as Shui Jianfeng said, ordinary foundation establishment perfected experts might not be able to understand what Lung Lung and Duan Muyu had done. However, if it was really decided by the Golden Core experts, he, Bing Wuqing, and Xianijia were the only three people present. As long as there were no accidents, Bing Wuqing would definitely be on his side. Wouldn't it be up to him to decide? You're being unreasonable. Even if the Golden Core experts were to be the judges, they must be from different sections. Who is qualified to do that now? Xianijia refuted on the spot and then said decisively, "It's hard to go against the will of the masses. I announce the winner of this duel is..." At this moment, Lin Yi suddenly interrupted. "Since both sides are equally matched, how about we call it a draw?" "A draw?" Xianijia was stunned and said awkwardly, "But there has never been a tie. Moreover, this match is directly related to the qualification to participate in the Archean trial. Can't they both qualify for the trial at the same time? Although this is a bit of an exception, special cases are special cases. I don't think the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance would be so unreasonable. After all, these are two rare geniuses. It would be a pity if one of them was eliminated," said Lin Yi. Originally, whether Duan Muyu qualified for the Archean trial or not had nothing to do with him. However, after watching this duel, this woman's determination really moved him. Moreover, Lin Yi was also very interested in the rejuvenation of withered leaves. There was no mention of this move in the summary of the mental cultivation methods sent by Tian Chan. Therefore he might as well do her a favor. Maybe he could find a chance to get some words out of her in the future. Xianijia pondered for a moment and finally nodded. "Yes, Grand Uncle Master is right. Rules are dead and people are alive. For this duel, Duan Muyu even used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be too unreasonable to force her to lose. Since that's the case, I'll declare it a draw." Nobody objected to this result. Firstly, it was to do Lin Yi a favor. Secondly, the result did not affect them at all. At most, Duan Muyu qualified for the trial. Moreover, Duan Muyu had just used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be impossible for her to recover within 3 months. Even if she qualified for the trial, it would only be symbolic. "Wait." Shui Jianfeng jumped out again and interrupted. "What do you want?" Xianijia, the honest man, finally got angry after being interrupted by this guy several times. He said with an unfriendly expression, "According to the results of the voting, Cold won. Announcing it as a draw is already very considerate of you. Shui Jianfeng, don't push your luck." This. Shui Jianfeng choked for a moment. At this moment he actually felt a substantial killing intent from the other party for the first time. An honest man was really scary when he was angry. After choking for a moment, Shui Jianfeng finally chose to shut his mouth. Now, not only the honest man Xianijia was angry, but everyone else was also staring at him with an unfriendly expression. If this went on, he would completely offend the crowd. It was unnecessary just for such a small matter. In this way, the opening battle of the 5th round of the trial competition ended in a draw. Cold and Duan Muyu qualified for the Archean trial at the same time. Duan Muyu panted weakly as she forced herself to lift her head to look at Lin Yi. "Thank you." She knew very well that if it was not for Lin Yi's insistence, Cold would have definitely won this battle. If that happened, she would be eliminated on the spot. Losing the qualification for the trial was a small matter, but it would affect the reputation of Yi Ling's sect. That was why she was grateful. "You're welcome," Lin Yi said as he looked at her. Not only was she very weak, but she also suffered from severe frostbite due to the intense battle with Cold. She was too close to Cold when the ice prison mirror was broken. He said, "If you don't mind, how about I help you to heal your wound? I think it's hard for you to recover on your own in your current state, right?" But Duan Muyu was a little hesitant. She was now in a weak state where the vital energy in her body was very weak. She did not know how long it would take for her to completely recover on her own. Moreover, the degree of frostbite from the ice prison mirror was not something that could be recovered easily unless there was a special medicinal pill in this area. "I'm going to heal Cold anyway. If you don't mind, you can come along. It's no trouble at all." Lin Yi smiled. Duan Muyu hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. "All right, thank you." With her status and background in Yi Ling's sect, the sect's higher-ups would definitely think of a way if she made a request. However, it was a problem whether she could take the medicinal pill in her current state. If she was not careful, the life-saving medicinal pill might turn into a fatal poison instead. Instead of that, it was better to take the risk and trust Lin Yi for once. Chapter 5209. He doesn't even let Duan Muyu go, what a pervert. Shui Jianfeng curled his lips at the scene, but there was an obvious jealousy in him. He'd been dreaming of replacing Lin Yi with himself. He had Ling Shan and the others help Cold and Duan Muyu to a secluded area to sit down. He then sat down and started healing the two girls. The frostbite from the shattered ice prison mirror was very troublesome, and even a great recovery pill wouldn't have much of an effect. Lung Lung was fine since she was the source of all the frostbite. Even if he got frostbite, it wouldn't be too serious. Duan Muyu, on the other hand, was in trouble. Not only was her frostbite severe, but she was also in an extremely weak state. Even if she used qi to treat her wounds, it would be even worse if she used a great recovery pill. It was a good thing that Lin Yi's consciousness was much sharper than when he was on Sky-class Island, and his control of qi was much finer and sharper. Otherwise he might really be helpless. Feeling the subtle changes in her body, Duan Muyu's eyes widened in disbelief. This Lin Yi actually had such a miraculous healing method. Don't move or don't blame me if you lose control of your qi. Lin Yi frowned. I'm sorry. Duan Muyu blushed and quickly suppressed the shock in her heart, trying her best not to move. After a while, Lung Lung's internal injuries were no longer a problem. She told Lin Yi about it and went to the side to continue her healing. Duan Muyu, on the other hand, had only recovered a small portion of her injuries. There's something I'm really curious about. I wonder if you could answer it for me? Lin Yi suddenly asked in the middle of healing. Duan Muyu paused and reacted, "This is why you're healing me?" "Don't worry, it's just a common question." Lin Yi smiled and asked, "Rejuvenation leaf should be a very costly move, right? Can you tell me about it?" "Overdrawing your life force in advance, plus a 3-month period of weakness." Duan Muyu didn't try to hide anything. There was nothing to hide. Anyone in the Archaic Alliance with the slightest bit of experience would know this. What about the effect? After paying such a huge price, he must have recovered to his peak state, right? Why don't I look like it? Lin Yi continued to ask. You could tell? Duan Muyu was shocked. Nonsense, if you had really recovered to your peak state at that time, why would you need to be so restrained when facing Cold? I think it's because he doesn't have enough true qi in his body, so he doesn't dare to rashly use powerful moves, right? Lin Yi speculated. Even from his point of view, the combination of falling leaves in autumn and a mountain-like leaf was a very simple and unsolvable combo. Not to mention the foundation building stage, it would be very effective even in the gold core stage. It should not be a problem to deal with Lung Lung in that state. Duan Muyu went silent for a moment before he said slowly, "Since it's like that, then I won't conceal it anymore. I didn't utilize the complete version of rejuvenation, so I haven't recovered to my peak state. I've only recovered less than half of it." "I see, then the period of weakness won't be as long as 3 months, right? Can I make it in time for the primordial trials?" Lin Yi suddenly came to a realization. This Duan Muyu was not the kind of woman who only lived for the sex reputation. The fact that she could use the incomplete version of rejuvenation in that situation not only proved that she had outstanding qualifications, but also proved that she was very smart. If everything goes well, it should be possible. Duan Muyu nodded. This primordial trials happened once in 1,000 years, she did not want to miss it no matter what. "Then I wish you all the best." Lin Yi suddenly stood up and said lightly, "The frostbite has been cleared. You can only rely on yourself to slowly recover from the following matters." "Excuse me." "Well, thank you." Duan Muyu sensed the condition of her body. As expected, other than being extremely weak, everything else was normal. She could not help but be surprised and happy. Seeing that Lin Yi was about to leave, she asked, "Say, why did you help me? Could it be that you've fallen for me?" Lin Yi's body staggered, almost choking on her words. Wasn't this woman a little too direct? "What? Isn't it?" Duan Muyu was stunned. In her opinion, since Lin Yi showed his goodwill to her for no reason and took the initiative to heal her, he must have some ulterior motives. It couldn't be that he really wanted to ask that common-sense question just now, right? Other than her looks, could it be that he had taken a fancy to something else? Although the word beauty didn't really match with Duan Muyu's manly temperament, it was undeniable that she was indeed a unique beauty. There was no lack of suitors in the small pugilistic world of the supreme ancient immortal realms, it was just that none of them could enter her sights. Being stared at by her like this, Lin Yi felt a little awkward. He thought for a moment and said, "If I said that I was looking for an opportunity to secretly learn rejuvenation, would you believe me?" Although this was mostly a joke, after witnessing the heaven-defying effects of rejuvenation, it would be a lie if Lin Yi said that he was not tempted at all. Although this move had terrible aftereffects, The powerful effect of instantly restoring one's peak state was still very useful in certain situations. However, to Lin Yi, who had the jade pendant space to continuously replenish his spirit chi, rejuvenation was not that valuable. It could only be considered a good backup trump card. Of course, it still had great research value. You want to learn rejuvenation? Duan Muyu looked at Lin Yi seriously, pondered for a moment and shook her head. This is the trump card of our Yiling sect, and we can't teach it to outsiders casually. Moreover, the aptitude requirement to master this move is very unique. Even among the Yiling sect's disciples, there aren't many who can master it. Oh, forget it then. It was just a whim. Goodbye. As he spoke, Lin Yi left, leaving only a silhouette in the distance. This Lin Yi is really a guy who can't be seen through, Duan Muyu said thoughtfully. Although the battle between Cold and Duan Muyu had dragged out a lot of time, there were very few battles in the 5th round to begin with. Basically, there were only 2 or 3 battles in each group and most of them ended very quickly. Among them, it was worth mentioning that there was a familiar face to Lin Yi in the mid-stage Foundation Establishment Group, Fei Yangshen. Chapter 52:10. The tournament continued and soon, it was Ziyu's turn. Letting Lung escape was already embarrassing enough for Xue Jianfeng, and naturally he had to use this chance to mess with Ziyu. Unfortunately, Ziyu wasn't the same as before, and with a set of instant attacks she took the opponent's life cleanly. The opponent didn't even have a chance to fight back, and as for Xue Jianfeng's warning, that was pure nonsense. At this point, Lin Yi's group had all obtained the qualifications to participate in the Archaean trials. As for Xue Jianfeng, who had vowed to make Lin Yi feel the pain of his heart's pain, not only did he get nothing out of it, but he almost lost against Lung Lung. He was a golden core early stage and he almost got dragged down by a Foundation Establishment perfection. That was a huge loss of face. I'll let you guys live a little longer. Don't even think about living after the Archaean trials. Looking at the cheering Lin Yi's group, Xue Jianfeng gritted his teeth. He didn't wait for the tournament to end before turning around and leaving with a dark face. He wasn't in a hurry to go back to sulk, but to apologize to the center. The tournament was already over. He had boasted in front of the glasses doctor before, and now he hadn't done anything at all. This wasn't just a problem of making a fool of himself. If the glasses doctor thought that he wasn't useful enough and cancelled his priority training, he'd really be coughing up blood. You're finally here. The glasses doctor said in a low voice, a little unhappy. That training competition is the highlight of this period of time, and my every move is being watched. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, it's not convenient for me to leave as I please. Please forgive me. Xue Jianfeng hurriedly tried to remedy the situation. Is that so? But why did we hear that not only did you leave in the middle of it, but you even left for a few days? Dafeng Bro curled his lips. This. Xue Jianfeng suddenly choked. Only then did he realize that someone else must have reported to him. After all, with so many people secretly relying on the center, it would be easy for the bespectacled doctor and brother Dafeng to grasp the situation of the trial. What? Do you still want to continue covering up the fact that you were beaten up by Lung Lung? Are you trying to keep us in the dark? Big brother Feng coldly snorted as he asked. He did not know about Lin Yi's plan to instigate defection. He was merely unhappy with Xue Jianfeng, the traitor. Not only that, the training competition was such a good opportunity, but you didn't do anything at all. Instead, Lin Yi and the others advanced smoothly one by one. How do you explain this? The bespectacled doctor was also extremely dissatisfied. To think that he had listed Xue Jianfeng as a person to focus on nurturing. He didn't expect that this guy would actually be so useless. Now even he felt that he had lost all face. Xue Jianfeng didn't dare to quibble. He admitted his mistake on the spot without the slightest hesitation, and his attitude was rather sincere. Please calm your anger, sirs. I did not do my job well and have disappointed you. I deserve death. His attitude stunned Big Brother Feng. In order to confuse him and make him think that he was still trusted, the bespectacled doctor had revealed to him the matter of focusing on nurturing. Big Brother Feng wanted to take this opportunity to trample on Xue Jianfeng. Even if he was to focus on nurturing, he had to find someone more pleasing to the eye. However, Xue Jianfeng's attitude made him unsure of how to kick him when he was down. Alright, I'll give you a chance to explain. The bespectacled doctor nodded. Although he was also very disappointed with Xue Jianfeng's incompetence, the name list had already been submitted. He did not want to go back on his word unless it was absolutely necessary. What's more, Shui Jianfeng's background in the Snow Sword faction was indeed very useful to the center. It was because of this that they treated him differently. Yes, thank you, sirs. Shui Jianfeng felt as if he had been pardoned. The bespectacled doctor's attitude meant that as long as he could give a good reason, he would be able to get away with it. He quickly said, "It's not that I didn't put in the effort in this tournament, but I did everything I could." Threats and promises were used, and the Archaic Alliance disciples who fought with Lin Yi also promised to go all out, but the result was that everyone was completely suppressed from start to finish. There was really no other way. Continue. The bespectacled doctor didn't say anything. Dafeng Bro naturally didn't say anything. Yes, this kind of suppression wasn't just on the surface. It was a direct suppression of the life gate. I don't know how Lin Yi did it, but to be suppressed like this in a fight of the same level, it'd be hard for him not to lose. Shui Jianfeng said respectfully. If that's the case, then I can't blame it on you. The bespectacled doctor nodded. Shui Jianfeng couldn't fight Lingshan's group himself after all. The most he could do was let the others use the opportunity to kill him. Failure was something he couldn't do anything about. But you're an early phase golden core, and not only did you fail to kill Lung Lung, you even almost lost to her. You can't deny this, can you? Dafeng Bro frowned. This. Shui Jianfeng's face turned red and he could only say, this subordinate was indeed careless and underestimated the enemy. I didn't expect that the painted ground imprisonment created by her shattered ice physique would be so powerful, so I suffered a loss. However, this subordinate guarantees that I won't fail next time. Next time? Dafeng Bro snorted. An early phase golden core couldn't even handle a foundation establishment full circle, and he still had the face to mention next time? Alright, let bygones be bygones. Since we failed this time, we need to think of a way to make up for it. Do you understand me? The bespectacled doctor interrupted. Thank you for your trust. I can't thank you enough. Shui Jianfeng was overjoyed and quickly said, after the competition ends, the next 2 months will be a collective rest period. Everyone will go into closed-door training. I think Lin Yi's group won't be an exception, so it'll be hard to find a suitable opportunity before the primeval trials. We can only wait for the primeval trials. If that's the case, then we'll wait for the primeval trials. The bespectacled doctor decided. This was something he and Shui Jianfeng had decided on their own. It wasn't an order from the higher-ups. It would be fine if there was a suitable opportunity, but since there wasn't one, there was no need to force it. Yes. Shui Jianfeng nodded. He couldn't help but ask, then when will the training start? If we wait until the primeval trials, it won't be convenient. Chapter 52:11. That's great. Thank you for the training. Shui Jianfeng was overjoyed. He thought he was done for after making such a fool of himself. He didn't expect the bespectacled doctor to think so highly of him. As long as he could get the opportunity to focus on training, his strength would definitely improve by leaps and bounds again. By then, even Bing Wuqing would be under his feet. This was his dream. Big brother Dafeng couldn't help but feel a little helpless, but since the bespectacled doctor had said so, he couldn't say much. He was nominally the leader of this operation, but to put it bluntly, he was just a puppet in name. What troubled him the most now was how to deliver the information to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he waited for Shui Jianfeng's strength to increase greatly and waited for an opportunity to strike in the primeval trial, even Lin Yi would suffer a great deal if he was caught off guard. However, if there were no special circumstances, he could only act with the bespectacled doctor. Even if he could move freely, it would not be easy to avoid the Primeval Alliance's disciples and contact Lin Yi. After all, there was no cell phone signal here, so he couldn't make a call even if he wanted to. He was at his wit's end. Fortunately, Big Brother Dafeng didn't have a headache for too long. It wasn't because he had the opportunity to go out alone, but because Lin Yi came to look for him. He was about to go to the primeval trial, and he didn't know how long it would take. Lin Yi naturally had to find a way to inform him. Although Big Brother Dafeng couldn't be too far away from the bespectacled doctor, there was still some free space, such as taking a dump. Of course, Big Brother Dafeng didn't know that Lin Yi would take the initiative to look for him. He was really taking a dump when Lin Yi's voice suddenly came from above his head. Dafeng, how have you been? Fuck. Big Brother Dafeng was shocked. When he looked up, he didn't see anything. He couldn't help but say suspiciously, no way? Is it because I've been cooped up in this damn place for too long that I'm having auditory hallucinations? Will I become mentally ill? Do you want me to take you to the mental hospital? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. As he spoke, he condensed a physical spirit in front of Big Brother Dafeng. Boss, is it really you? Big Brother Feng was surprised and overjoyed. He immediately reacted and lowered his voice, grumbling, "Boss, why are you so elusive? You scared the shit out of me." Linny was speechless. Seeing that this guy was about to get close to him without even pulling up his pants, he quickly jumped back in fright. He pinched his nose and frowned. "Can you please wipe your butt first?" Oh. Big Brother Feng picked up a few leaves from the side and rubbed them symbolically. Then he pulled up his pants without a care in the world. However, Lin Yi's eyelids kept twitching. Fortunately, he wasn't a clean freak. Otherwise, he would have collapsed at the sight of this scene. However, out of psychological effects, he subconsciously took 2 steps back and maintained a safe distance. "Let's talk this out. Just stand there." Look. Big Brother Feng's expression was very sad, but the other party's disgust was already written on his face. He was too embarrassed to continue to get close to him, so he quickly threw away the leaves in his hand and said embarrassedly, "Boss, how did you find me?" "I knew when you came in. I saw your every move. It's just that I wasn't proficient in the spirit state at that time, so I didn't dare to come down and meet you." Linny smiled. "Spirit state?" Big Brother Feng was confused. Linny didn't explain these things to him in detail. Of course, he couldn't understand at his level, but he didn't need to understand too much. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "It's good that you know. I was afraid that you would be kept in the dark and be tricked by these guys. Sure enough, my worries were unnecessary. Boss is the boss. It's all thanks to you keeping an eye on me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even know they sneaked in. The consequences would be unimaginable." Linny sighed. During this time, Big Brother Feng didn't seem to play any role, but in fact, his existence itself was very valuable. Even if Lin Yi had rebelled against Bing Wuqing and the other Archaic Alliance masters, Big Brother Feng's position was still unique. No matter what, it's fine as long as I can help boss." Big Brother Feng smiled carelessly and said, "By the way, recently Dr. Glasses and the others are doing some kind of focus training program. I wonder if boss has noticed?" "Focus training program?" Linny was taken aback. He had been busy training everyone to deal with the trial. He didn't have time to monitor every move here, so he really didn't know anything about it. He quickly said, "Tell me in detail." "I don't know the specific plan. It was proposed by the bespectacled doctor directly to the higher-ups. I didn't do it myself. I just heard him mention it casually. However, one thing is for sure. The target for training this time is Xue Jianfeng," Brother Dafeng said in detail. "Xue Jianfeng? How can it be him? Shouldn't Bing Wuqing be valued more?" Linny frowned. Since it was a focus training program, it meant that the center would definitely invest a lot of resources into it. It would be great if it was Bing Wuqing who was one of them. It would be equivalent to the center working for him for nothing. He didn't expect them to choose Xue Jianfeng. From what Dr. Glasses said, it's probably because of Xue Jianfeng's background in the Snow Sword faction. It would be convenient for the center to do anything in the Archaic Alliance in the future. Big Brother Feng frowned. The higher-ups of the center did not intend to tell him these things clearly, but intentionally or unintentionally revealed them to him through Dr. Glass's mouth. They did not trust him as an outsider, which made him feel a little unnatural, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong at the moment. Sure enough, the center will not let go of this fat piece of archaic underworld. Linny shook his head and laughed. There was no need to think about this at all. The center would definitely copy what they did on Heaven Stage Island to archaic underworld. Although this expansion method of the Chamber of Commerce was not very clever, it was indeed successful. Apart from this, there are no other movements recently. The instigating and controlling of the Archaic Alliance's disciples has basically stopped. If we want to go further, we will have to wait for instructions from the higher-ups, Big Brother Feng said. Okay, I got it. Lin Yi nodded and instructed, I'm going to bring some people to participate in the Archaic trials. You stay put and hide. Remember, safety first. Unless I tell you to move, you can't move on your own. Don't raise suspicions. Boss, don't worry. I understand, Big Brother Feng promised. Chapter 52:12. Boss is the boss. His methods are so fucking unpredictable, Brother Dafeng praised. Suddenly Lin Yi's voice came from above. There's something I forgot to tell you, please tell me, boss. Brother Dafeng immediately stood at attention, looking like he would go through fire and water without hesitation. You stepped on shit. Lin Yi's tone was very complicated. If it wasn't for this, he might be willing to stay a little longer. But now he really couldn't stand it anymore. Fuck. Who the fuck peed and pooped everywhere? Do you have any morals? Brother Doffing suddenly cursed. Even the bespectacled doctor in the distance heard the commotion and looked puzzled. Lin Yi ran away in embarrassment, and at the same time he said, "That seems to be your own." After leaving, Lin Yi didn't directly return to the island exclusive to the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island. Instead, he went to the territory of the Snow Sword School and found Bing Wuqing after carefully avoiding everyone's eyes and ears. Bing Wuqing was shocked when she heard Lin Yi's primordial spirit voice transmission. She was in the late Golden Elixir realm and had her signature ruthless ice aura, but she didn't notice it at all. She couldn't help but be secretly afraid. Although Lin Yi was only in the great completion of Foundation establishment, his methods were really unfathomable. Lin Yi didn't show up on the spot. After all, Shui Jianfeng wasn't far away. After the primordial spirit voice transmission, he waited in another secluded place on the island. Bing Wuqing immediately understood. She stood up and walked toward a secluded place. However, when she turned around, she ran into Shui Jianfeng. This guy looked very suspicious. "Where are you going, senior brother Bing? Why do I need to report to you about what I'm doing?" Bing Wuqing glanced at him. He was such a person. Besides, there was a huge gap between their strength. Of course, he didn't need to care about Shui Jianfeng's feelings. "That's not it. It's just that the two of us work together. Senior brother Bing, you can let me know in advance if you need anything. Maybe I can help?" Shui Jianfeng said shamelessly. It wasn't because of anything else. He was purely afraid that Bing Wuqing would go to the bespectacled doctor for special training like him. Wouldn't it be a big loss if she took his priority training spot? Bing Wuqing frowned and said, "I'm going in seclusion." Seclusion? Shui Jianfeng was still skeptical until he confirmed that Bing Wuqing wasn't heading in the direction of the bespectacled professor. Only then did he feel relieved. He was secretly pleased with himself. "Go ahead and cultivate in seclusion. When you're done and come out, I'll see if you still have the guts to put on that dead face of yours." After making sure that Shui Jianfeng had not followed her secretly, Bing Wuqing then went to look for Lin Yi. She bowed respectfully and asked, "May I know what instructions the higher-ups have for me?" "It's nothing. I just found out that the center is going to focus on nurturing Shui Jianfeng. So, I'm just informing you," Lin Yi said indifferently. "There's such a thing?" Bing Wuqing was startled when she heard that. When she thought of Shui Jianfeng's strange behavior just now, she suddenly realized that this brat was trying to get special treatment behind her back. A wave of anger rose in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She said in a low voice, "Your subordinate is slow and didn't realize it in time. Please punish me." "Punish?" Lin Yi laughed when he heard that. He casually threw 2 elixirs to her and said playfully, "All right then. Take these 2 poisonous pills as punishment and kill yourself as an apology." This. Bing Wuqing's expression changed. She struggled and hesitated for a moment, but then she took the elixirs and stuffed them into her mouth. She had no intention of resisting at all. Of course, she knew that resistance was futile. After all, she still had Lin Dongfang's goo in her body. If she dared to resist, she would definitely die a horrible death. Lin Yi was a little stunned when he saw that. Bing Wuqing's action couldn't be said to be very loyal, but at least it showed that she was very adaptable. It was easy to deal with people like her, as long as she always maintained an advantage in terms of strength. At the last moment, Lin Yi finally stopped Bing Wuqing. He laughed and said, "Why don't you take a look at what these elixirs are? How dare you stuff them into your mouth like that?" Bing Wuqing was shocked when she heard that. Only then did she take a closer look at the 2 elixirs in her hand. When she came back to her senses, she was instantly stunned. She cried out in shock, "Supreme-grade gold cores? If you really eat both of them together, let's not talk about whether you can take it or not. Even if you can, you'll definitely regret it to death," Lin Yi said, amused. I forgot myself." Bing Wuqing was a little embarrassed, which was rare for her. Just as Lin Yi had said, if she really ate these 2 supreme-grade gold cores together, she would definitely regret it to death. She could have broken through to gold core perfected, but if she ate them together, she might only be able to reach the peak of gold core late stage. "It's nothing. If even your behavior is considered to have forgotten yourself, I reckon no one in the world can keep their composure." Lin Yi shook his head. Bing Wuqing's actions just now had truly given him a fright. Although he couldn't completely rule out the possibility that she was acting, that kind of reaction wasn't something an ordinary person could pull off. He had to admit that she was indeed a talent. "Thank you so much for your guidance." Bing Wuqing clenched the 2 supreme-grade gold cores tightly, her eyes shining with excitement. She couldn't help but feel excited. These 2 elixirs were almost equivalent to guaranteeing her a 2-level upgrade in an extremely short period of time. It was a good thing that she couldn't even dream of. Since you're my subordinate, I naturally have to give you some benefits. Otherwise, if even trash like Shui Jianfeng rides over your head, wouldn't it be very embarrassing for me? Lin Yi said with a smile. Rest assured, I will definitely keep a close eye on Shui Jianfeng and not let him get out of control. Bing Wuqing understood tacitly. Very well. In that case you should go into seclusion. I'll take my leave first. As he spoke, Lin Yi transformed into the form of a primordial spirit and disappeared. Bing Wuqing stayed where she was for a moment. No one knew what she was thinking about. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in her eyes, and she immediately sat down cross-legged to adjust her condition. There was still 1.5 months before the start of the primeval trials. If she wanted to completely digest the medicinal effects of these 2 supreme-grade gold cores, she had to make the best use of her time. At the same time, Shui Jianfeng, who was on the other side, inexplicably shuddered. Then he went to look for the bespectacled doctor. The long-awaited intensive training was finally about to begin. Chapter 52:13. Even with Lin Yi's protection, Lin Yi couldn't guarantee everyone's safety. After all, Shui Jianfeng, who'd gone through intensive training, was a completely different person. He was a threat that couldn't be underestimated. And so, in the last month and a half, Lingshan and the others went into closed-door training. With the supreme-grade foundation and foundation-breaking pills that Lin Yi had prepared for them, even if they couldn't level up, they could at least solidify their strength and protect themselves. As for Lin Yi, it was a bit troublesome for himself. Other than trying to figure out the tricks and uses of the half-primordial spirit, it seemed like breaking through to foundation full mastery was as hard as reaching the heavens. He didn't know why, but no matter how hard he tried, he was always lacking something. If it was someone else, they might think that they were just a thin line away from success and would try everything they could, but Lin Yi himself was a mystic early-phase practitioner after all. He had a lot of experience when it came to things like breakthroughs, and he knew that he was missing something. Forcing it would only backfire. But the problem was, what was missing? Or was it that the limit of the primordial spirit was foundation full mastery? He didn't know, but the former was more or less possible, but if it was the latter, then there was nothing he could do. Even Lin Yi couldn't do anything about it. Lin Yi felt helpless. Although the half-primordial spirit state was a great trump card, it wasn't a long-term plan. Even someone like Shui Jianfeng was a golden core practitioner now, and he'd be even stronger in the primordial trials. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was stuck at foundation full mastery, and he couldn't make any progress. Lin Yi really didn't have the strength to do what he wanted. 1.5 months later, everyone was gathered by Enchanted again, but they were divided into 2 groups. One of them was eager to try because they were about to start the primordial trials that only happen once in 1,000 years. The other group was depressed because they were the losers of the primordial trials. No matter how rare the primordial trials was, it had nothing to do with them anymore. Everyone, the year-long training in the mortal world has officially come to an end today. Although many things happened in the process, it's finally over. Congratulations. Enchanted said loudly and nodded to Lin Yi gratefully. That's right, Lin Yi. If it wasn't for Lin Yi, the Grand Master who turned the tide, it was hard to say what would have happened between the Primordial Alliance and the Cultivators' Alliance in the secular world. Perhaps the secular world would have been plunged into misery and suffering, and the Primordial Alliance would have lost a bunch of disciples. The situation would be out of control, and Enchanted, as the Grand Master who led the team, would have to bear the blame. The others didn't comment on this. For most of the Primordial Alliance's disciples, the secular world experiential trials was just a recreational activity. Apart from seeing the colorful world of the secular world, they didn't expect to gain any substantial gains. In fact, most of them went out for a walk at the beginning, and after that they stayed in the transit islands to cultivate. Instead of saying that they came out for the secular world experiential trials, it was better to say that they came out for closed-door training. Since the secular world experiential trials has ended, according to the order of the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups, everyone should go back to their respective places. Enchanted paused and announced, "First of all, the disciples who were eliminated in the grand competition will be teleported back to the primordial underworld, and report back to your respective sections. No one is allowed to stay here." Everyone had expected this result. Although they were reluctant to leave the transit islands for the unique spiritual chi, it was an order from the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups. They didn't have the guts to defy it, so they could only agree in unison. Under Enchanted supervision, Everyone entered the teleportation formation. With a flash of white light, they disappeared in the teleportation formation. After that, Enchanted turned to Lin Yi and the others and said, "As for the rest of you, you are the elites who have passed the grand competition and successfully obtained the qualifications to participate in the trial. The place you will be going next is naturally the legendary primordial trial." "Martial Uncle Xian, where is this primordial trial that you mentioned?" someone asked impatiently. "Yeah, you made us dig for so long in the underwater spirit jade mine, saying that it's to prepare for the primordial trial, but I don't see a third teleportation formation." The others followed. 2 teleportation formations, one was connected to the secular world and the other to the primordial underworld. Where was the third one? "There is, but it hasn't appeared yet." Enchanted pretended to be profound and smiled. "It hasn't appeared yet?" Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. Could it be that the teleportation formation could be hidden? Everyone calmed down. According to the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups, the teleportation formation will appear today. Just wait patiently. Enchanted said and sat down. Lin Yi smiled faintly and sat down as well. The others looked at each other. Although their hearts were itching like a cat scratching them, since Enchanted wanted to keep them in suspense, there was nothing they could do. They could only sit down and wait. At this time, Duan Muyu suddenly walked over and sat down beside Lin Yi under everyone's surprised gaze. Under normal circumstances, when a woman sat next to a man, she would be embarrassed and blushed. However, her expression was calm and composed, without the slightest bit of embarrassment. On the contrary, she was more elegant and calm than most men. "Brother Lin, thank you for your help last time." Duan Muyu cupped her hands. "You're welcome. It's nothing." Lin Yi smiled faintly and shook his head. "It might be nothing to you, but it's no small matter to me. If it wasn't for Brother Lin, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to participate in the primordial trials and would have to return home like the others," Duan Muyu said seriously. He wasn't just saying that out of politeness. If it weren't for Lin Yi treating her frostbite, just the frostbite from the shattered ice prison mirror would have given her a headache for a few months. Let alone participating in the Archean trials, she might still be busy treating her wounds right now. "So, Miss Duan Muyu has fully recovered?" Lin Yi asked curiously. The weak period of rejuvenation withered leaves was 3 months. Although Duan Muyu used an incomplete version, it had only been 1.5 months. It was still unknown whether she had fully recovered. Maybe this woman was taking the risk to participate in the primordial trials. "You can say that." Duan Muyu's answer was ambiguous. After all, they were not familiar with each other. If she casually told Lin Yi, it would be too immature. Chapter 52:14. They chatted to kill time as they waited for the moment Enchanted was talking about. They waited for an entire day and nothing happened even when the sky turned dark. There wasn't even a shadow of the so-called third portal. "Uncle Xian, where is this third portal you're talking about? Is it just a legend?" The people couldn't help but wonder. That. Enchanted was a bit troubled himself, but this third portal was something recorded in the archaic pugilistic world. It definitely wasn't a legend. But could it be that the Archaic Alliance had miscalculated the date of the portal's appearance? That was hard to say. Enchanted reaction made the group even more suspicious. They'd been looking forward to this once-in-a-thousand-years trial for a whole year, and they'd even given it their all to pass the toughest test in history, but now they couldn't even see the shadow of the third portal. This was just a legend, how could they take it? Just when everyone was thinking about it, Ziyu suddenly said, "The moon tonight is so round and so close." Everyone was taken aback when they heard that. They looked up and started to discuss among themselves. For some reason, the moon tonight was indeed very round and close to them. If it was just round, it would be fine. After all, the moon was waxing and waning. Even if this was a transit point, there was nothing strange about it. However, the moon tonight was ridiculously close. It felt like they could touch it if they stretched out their hands. It was almost pressing down on everyone's face. This was something that no one had ever seen before. "Look, the tide's receding so fast," someone shouted. Everyone looked over, and the tide was indeed receding fast. In just an instant, the water level dropped by a huge chunk, and there were no signs of it slowing down at all. The tide was receding faster and faster, and in the end, it sounded like it was going to destroy the world. It was truly shocking. It's actually connected. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. This was originally a transit island, but after the unprecedented turbulent ebb tide, the shallow sea that originally separated the islands had all turned into land, and they were all connected. Hm? Isn't that the spirit jade mine under the sea? It's much easier to mine now. We don't have to come up for air every once in a while and it's so slow. If we go mining now we can probably get 3 pieces a day, the group discussed. However, Enchanted ignored the crowd's discussion. Instead, he walked toward the new land that appeared out of nowhere with a complicated and abstruse drawing in his hand. Everyone didn't know what was going on, so they stood up and followed him. They couldn't help but ask, "Marshal Uncle X, is there any mystery in this?" "The secret is right here." Enchanted suddenly stopped and pointed at the round black stone he was stepping on. The group walked up and looked at it. Other than being a bit harder, there didn't seem to be anything special about it. They looked at each other. "What's so special about it?" Enchanted smiled mysteriously without saying a word. After comparing it with his abstruse drawing, he turned around and walked to another place. Soon he found another piece of black stone, which was exactly the same as the previous one. Then he found the third, the fourth, the fifth. In the end he found a total of 72 identical black stones in a large area around him. Furthermore, they seemed to have formed an inexplicable and mysterious spell formation. "What are these?" The group was confused. "Black stone plum blossom formation." Enchanted smiled while stroking his beard. "Black stone plum blossom formation? What is this thing? Is it also a type of teleportation array?" Everyone was confused by what they saw. "No, but we'll see the third teleportation formation soon. Come, everyone help me. Put 3 pieces of spiritual jade on each black stone," Enchanted said. A moment later, 3 pieces of spiritual jade were placed on each of the 72 black stones according to Enchanted's instruction. At first there was no movement, but soon they began to glow. Then an invisible gust of wind rose into the sky, sweeping away all the sand in an instant. The entire ground sank by 7 to 8 meters. The group was shocked. The black stones they saw earlier were just a small part of it. It turned out that there were 72 black stone pillars, and there was an ancient teleportation formation among them. The third teleportation formation. The group was overjoyed. One of them said regretfully, "If we knew we could find the teleportation formation by removing the sand, we wouldn't have wasted so many spiritual jades. We could have saved them with just a little effort." It was not difficult for them to remove the sand, but more than 200 spiritual jades were a huge sum in the ancient underworld. Many of them had never seen so many spiritual jades in their lives. "You're overthinking. The black stone plum blossom formation is an ancient maze. If you don't activate it with spiritual jades, you won't be able to find the teleportation formation even if you clean up all the sand." Enchanted shook his head. "Since we've found the teleportation formation, let's start the teleportation." Shui Jianfeng suddenly stood up and said. Ever since he came back from the center's intensive training, his temperament had changed a lot. He became more reserved and deep. He no longer had the arrogant attitude he used to have. Instead, he was more like a venomous snake that kept spitting out its tongue as if it was going to devour someone at any time. Hearing his words, the group who were still immersed in shock immediately came to their senses. They became impatient and wanted to be the first to rush into the teleportation formation. "All right, then everyone enter in order. There's no need to hurry. There are only 43 people in total." With the scale of this ancient teleportation formation, it's enough to teleport everyone in one go. Enchanted immediately led the group into the teleportation formation one by one. 43. This was the total number of people participating in the archaic trials, and this was also because of Lin Yi's group. Otherwise, the number of people would be even lower. People valued quality over quantity. This was the unified thinking of the Archaic Alliance. They didn't need to let every disciple of the Archaic Alliance get the opportunity. They just needed to make sure that the most deserving disciples didn't miss it. Chapter 52:15. So you're saying that the Spirit River might be fake? Someone asked. I don't think so. After all, almost all the ancient books related to this trial ground have mentioned about the River of Consciousness. However, it's hard to tell what exactly the River of Consciousness is. You can only explore it with your own eyes. Maybe it's really a legendary River of Consciousness, or maybe it's a dangerous River of Consciousness. Everyone just be careful. Enchanted said. The group looked at each other. The thing they were looking forward to the most was the legendary Spirit River. Enchanted words were like pouring a bucket of cold water on their heads. No matter what, take care of yourselves. Anyway, take care of yourselves. I'll stay here for a month after you're teleported over. If anything happens to you, you can always find a way to teleport back here. However, if you wait for a month, the tide will rise again. By then, you'll have to find another one-way teleportation formation to return to the primordial underworld. As for the map of the one-way teleportation formation, each of you will have a copy. However, it might be different from the actual map, Enchanted reminded. In other words, within a month, everyone still had the chance to back out if the situation was bad. After all, this training ground was only opened once every 1,000 years, and no one knew how it was now. If they were to directly cut off everyone's path of retreat with danger everywhere, causing all the genius disciples to be annihilated, then that would be a huge joke. However, after a month he wouldn't even have the chance to change his mind. No matter how dangerous the situation would be, he would have to brace himself and find another one-way teleportation array. Otherwise, he would be trapped in the trial grounds waiting for death. Enchanted started arranging large amounts of spirit jade to activate the portal. Lin Yi, Ling Shan, and the others looked at each other. According to Enchanted, it wouldn't be easy for them to come back from the ancient Jianghu. If they couldn't come back through the portal, they would have to go back to the ancient Jianghu. The time it would take would be unimaginable. It might take years or even decades. Fortunately, they were mentally prepared for this. They had told their friends and family beforehand so they could take care of each other. It wouldn't be a big deal even if it took a long time. Everything was ready. The portal was finally activated. A white light flashed and the scene in front of Lin Yi and the others changed. Why is it so dark? The group thought that their eyes weren't used to it yet, but it was still pitch black after a while. They started complaining. Even if it was pitch black, there shouldn't be no light at all. Don't panic, it's a cave. Lin Yi comforted them and reminded Ling Shan and the others, you can use your spirit sense if you can't see with your eyes. This is something you need to get used to. After reaching a certain level, basically everyone would use their divine sense as their primary means of perception. If they really relied on their eyes, it would be very difficult to even keep up with their opponent's movement technique, let alone fight against them. It really is a cave and it's very narrow and deep. Lung Ling nodded. She was the second strongest person in the group, and was also a foundation perfection practitioner. Naturally, her reactions were faster than Ling Shan and the others. The others also reacted, using their divine senses to sense the surrounding environment. Although there was no visual effect of color, their perception of shapes and silhouettes was more detailed and distinct. Why would the ancients put the portal in such a deep cave? It's scary. The group was speechless. No matter what, let's get out of here first. After saying that, someone took the lead and walked towards the entrance of the cave. The others didn't have any intention of staying here and followed suit one after another. Only Lin Yi stayed and studied the portal underfoot. The structure of this portal was exactly the same as the one in the Transit Islands. In theory, it could be activated with enough spirit jade. But as Enchanted said, the place would be covered in seawater again a month later, and the black stone plum blossom formation would be activated again. It would be hard to say if the portal could still be used then. Right at this moment, a shrill and miserable howl suddenly rang out not far ahead. What followed was a flurry of panic. Everyone who had gone out earlier had actually all fled back except for two people. One was Shui Jianfeng and the other was Bing Wuqing. Everyone be careful. Lin Yi gestured for the group to form a defensive formation. This was something they'd practiced for all sorts of dangers they might face in the primordial trials, but this formation was more than enough for defense, not enough for offense. It only made them a little safer. The group didn't dare tarry. Something that could scare so many elites of the Archaic Alliance this badly had to be a big threat. Sure enough, after the people at the front fled back, a group of fire-like existences also whistled and chased after them. Moreover, there were many of them, if not 10,000, there were at least 8,000. What's this? Ling Shan and the others were startled at the sight. These things were extremely fast, covering the skies in the blink of an eye. One of the Foundation Establishment primeval disciples who was a bit slower got caught up and was dismembered into a pile of meat in an instant, his body still sizzling and smoking. It was a horrible sight to behold. Fire bats. Lin Yi blurted out. He'd seen these things in the Book of Omniscient on Sky Island before. They were extremely bloodthirsty spirit beasts, and while they weren't strong individually, at most at the early phase of Foundation establishment, they always moved in groups. Now that there were tens of thousands of them, the threat they posed wasn't something normal Foundation establishment practitioners could handle. The two Golden Core experts, Bing Wuqing and Shui Jianfeng, were the strongest among them. If the two of them were willing to go all out, dealing with this flock of fire bats would not be a problem. Unfortunately, the two of them had no intention of doing so. Instead, they directly passed through the flock of fire bats and left, leaving only a group of Foundation establishment experts trapped here. The swarm of fire bats closed in. With the previous example right in front of their eyes, everyone didn't dare to have any thoughts of holding back their strength. They hastily used the martial skills they were most proficient in to counterattack. Rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, and the scene became extremely lively for a moment. However, the bats were too small and they were extremely fast and agile. The group's messy attacks couldn't hit them, and they could only cover their heads and run. Chapter 52:16. Firebat King? What does the Firebat King look like? Everyone quickly shouted. The thousands of fire bats here looked almost the same. Even if they lined up one by one for them to look at, they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, let alone in this situation. The strongest one is the Firebat King, Linny said in a low voice. It was indeed difficult to tell from their appearance, but one thing was for sure. The Firebat King's strength must be above all the fire bats, or else it would not be able to control the entire flock of fire bats. That being said, it was not easy to find the strongest fire bat among the tens of thousands of fire bats. With the divine sense of these Foundation establishment stage experts, it was difficult to even lock onto the position of these rapidly moving fire bats, let alone carefully distinguish the strength of each fire bat. This was as difficult as ascending to heaven for everyone, but it was a piece of cake for Lin Yi. He found the Firebat King's tracks in an instant. Most of the other fire bats had strength comparable to the early stage of the Foundation establishment. The stronger ones were at most comparable to the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment. However, this Firebat King, which looked exactly the same, had strength above the middle stage of the Foundation establishment. The speed of ordinary fire bats was already extremely fast, so fast that everyone could not react at all. However, this Firebat King's speed was several times faster. Although there was a residual flame arc wherever it passed, it could not be determined at all. Perhaps it was right in front of them a moment ago, but in the next moment, it was already hundreds of meters away. Even the flame arc it left behind could not catch up with such terrifying speed. It would be fine if that was all, but the key was that this Firebat King was very cautious. Every time it came in contact, it would retreat immediately. Usually, it would quickly hide back into the flock of fire bats after just one bite, making it impossible for anyone to chase after it. With Lin Yi's reminder, the others could not react in time, but two people had noticed the Firebat King's tracks. When it attacked again, the two of them attacked almost at the same time. They were Cold and Duanmuyu. In terms of strength, the two women were already top-notch among the Foundation establishment experts. It should have been a piece of cake for them to deal with this Firebat King. However, this time, the two women's attacks missed, and they almost hurt each other accidentally. Fortunately, they stopped in time. So fast. Lung Lung and Duanmuyu exclaimed at the same time. The Firebat King might not be considered powerful in other aspects, but its speed was truly invincible. Even the vital energy of its moves could not catch up to it. What could the crowd do to it? Fortunately, there was still Lin Yi. Before the Firebat King could escape back into the group of fire bats, a blue electric arc had already struck it. Lin Yi's other moves might not be able to do anything to it, but no matter how fast it was, how could it compare to the electric arc? With Lin Yi's current strength at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm, it was impossible for him to completely unleash his signature move. The 5 elements 8 trigrams killing aura and thunder burial were both wishful thinking. Being able to barely use the 5 elements 8 trigrams killing aura was already something he was secretly happy about. Other than that, he could just barely mobilize some of the power of thunder and lightning. However, there was no way he could use thunder burial. It was also impossible for him to use Thousand Thunder Explosion. An electric arc was not a threat to an expert of the same level. At most, it would numb the body for a moment. However, it was just right to deal with the Firebat King that was comparable to a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm expert. As expected, after the Firebat King was hit by the electric arc, its body trembled and fell on the spot. Although it did not die immediately, it struggled on the ground and seemed to be able to fly. However, the crowd would not give it another chance. Lung Lung went up and struck the Firebat King with her palm, freezing it to death on the spot. This was called the Broken Ice Palm. Although it was not an ultimate move like the Painted Prison or the Ice Prison Mirror, it was still a unique palm technique that was fused with the Broken Ice Aura. It was Lung Lung's usual move against the enemy. As soon as the Firebat King died, the group of Firebats was instantly thrown into chaos. After losing their leader, they instinctively scattered in all directions. Just a moment ago they were everywhere, but in the blink of an eye they were all gone. Foe. The group breathed heavily, their hearts filled with fear. At least 3 of them had died to the fire bats and the rest were injured. If it wasn't for Lin Yi finding the fire bat king and killing it, there would have been more of them dead. Most of them would have died here. This was indeed the Archean trials that happened once in 1,000 years. They had left a deep impression on the group. "Alright, let's go," Lin Yi said. Ling Shan and the others nodded, but the other Archean Alliance disciples were scared out of their wits by the fire bats. They all hid behind Lin Yi's group so that if anything happened, the first to die would be Lin Yi's group, not them. A bunch of scum. Qin Tian curled his lips softly. If it weren't for Lin Yi, they'd be dead by now. Not only did he not say a word of thanks, but he was even hiding behind them with ulterior motives, using them as scapegoats. He was speechless. That's right, Lin Yi bro shouldn't have killed that fire bat king. We'll charge out ourselves and let them play with the fire bats. Ziyu humphed. Haha, then we're probably done for. If we're lucky we might be able to teleport back, but if we're slow we'll end up like those 3, a pile of meat on the ground. Yu Bing snickered. The others all grinned. The Archean Alliance disciples weren't happy with what they said, but they knew they were in the wrong. They didn't have the face to say anything, otherwise Lin Yi would force them to walk in front. They didn't have the guts to do that. Not long later the group finally walked out of the cave, and their eyes widened into a lush forest. Thank goodness we're finally out. Everyone was overjoyed to see this. Although they knew that this training ground that only appeared once in 1,000 years would definitely be filled with dangers, and that there might be monsters that were even more ferocious and frightening than the flock of fire bats hidden within, this was human nature. There was always an innate fear towards this kind of dark and narrow cave. After experiencing the threat of the flock of fire bats, this fear had been magnified infinitely, causing them to not want to stay even a moment longer. Why are there 3 paths here? Someone called out suddenly. The group only reacted then, looking at each other. The map Xanija gave them was very sketchy, and not only was there no markings for the fire bat's cave, there was only one path to exit the teleportation formation, but there were 3 paths in front of them, 3 stone paths that weren't too wide or too narrow. There were weeds everywhere, but the paths were clear. Chapter 52:17. Plus, even if that was the case, these 3 stone paths should have disappeared after 1,000 years of weathering. How could they still be here? They couldn't say that these stone paths were reinforced by some special formation, could they? It wasn't impossible, but it wasn't very likely. In comparison, Lin Yi was more inclined to believe that there were other people in this place. Perhaps there were natives here that few people knew about, or perhaps there were trial takers who teleported here from other places. Normal people wouldn't think of this, but for someone like Lin Yi who came back from Skystage Island, it made sense. After all, no one said that this teleportation formation was only connected to the Transfer Islands. Maybe it was connected to Skystage Island as well? But no matter what, since they were already here they could only take it one step at a time. Right, where's Bing Wuqing and Shui Jianfeng? Someone asked. The others all shook their heads. These 2 used their golden core stage strength to ignore the threat of the fire bats, rushing out early. They couldn't even be seen now. Do you even need to ask? They couldn't wait to go to the River of Consciousness. They wouldn't stay here and wait for us, would they? Someone said. Not necessarily, this is a once in 1,000 years, the River of Consciousness. It's rare for us to come here, so we'd be idiots if we just went to the River of Consciousness. We'd be missing out on a lot of good things. Someone laughed. If that's the case, then why are we wasting time here? Let's go. The group couldn't wait to set off, but when they saw the 3 paths in front of them, they all paused and looked at each other before turning their attention to Lin Yi. What? You want me, Lin Yi bro, to open the path for you? You're too despicable. Ziyu said angrily. This. Everyone was a little embarrassed that their thoughts had been exposed. That was indeed what they were thinking. Other than Bing Wuqing and Shui Jianfeng, the 2 golden core stage cultivators, Lin Yi was the strongest. Just like what had happened just now, in this primeval trial ground where danger lurked everywhere, only by following Lin Yi closely would they be able to ensure their safety. You're wrong. I just wanted to see which path Brother Lin would choose. I don't want to pick the same path as me. Someone walked out from the crowd, smiling faintly. It was the young master of the Thousand Blades sect, Ling Tianyu. Me too. Duanmuyu smiled faintly as well. Only then did everyone understand. No wonder the 2 of them had been silent all this while. It turned out that they had been planning this. Of course, if they could follow behind Lin Yi, it would be much safer. But at the same time, if they encountered anything good, it would be snatched away by Lin Yi's group. They wouldn't even be able to get a sip of the soup, let alone the meat. I see. Then I'll take my leave. Lin Yi nodded to the two. These two were the people he looked up to the most in the Archaic Alliance. This was good too. There would be less conflict if they each chose a path. It wasn't a bad thing. After exchanging greetings, Lin Yi led Ling Shan and the others to the stone path on the left. None of the three paths were marked on the map. No one knew where they would go. He just picked one randomly. Seeing this, Ling Tianyu smiled and immediately chose another path to take the lead. Duan Muyu chose the third path, leaving the rest of the people to look at each other in dismay and hesitation. Other than Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, who were nowhere to be found, these three paths each had a leader. Of course, Lin Yi's group was the strongest. Not only did they have Lin Yi, they also had Cold, a peak-level foundation establishment perfection. Other than Ling Shan and the others, while most of them were only at the early phase, with 2 or 3 at the early phase peak. None of them were easy to deal with, and most importantly, they were extremely united. The others couldn't compete with them at all. Other than that, Ling Tianyu and Duan Muyu were about the same. The former was only late phase peak, but he was a genius with 1,000 blades. Other than a freak like Lin Yi, he was practically invincible. Duan Muyu, on the other hand, was a little less famous, but his strength wasn't to be underestimated either. Compared to Lin Yi's group, they were obviously much weaker. Soon everyone made their decision. Most of them chose Ling Tianyu and Duan Muyu's paths, and only 3 people chose Lin Yi's path. Compared to the possibility of obtaining a fortuitous encounter, these people obviously cared more about their personal safety. They didn't have any extravagant hopes for the other fortuitous encounters in this ancient trial, except for the River of Divine Knowledge. Even if Lin Yi's group had a lot of people, and they could take all the treasures and fortunes in front of them, they couldn't possibly take the entire River of Consciousness, could they? They didn't have a lot of people in the first place, and this split made them even weaker. But this didn't affect Lin Yi's group at all. As long as they supported each other, that was enough. They wouldn't be happy if all the other Archaic Alliance disciples followed them. Not only would they have to guard against all sorts of dangers and mishaps in the trials, but they would also have to guard against the traitors behind them. It was a headache just thinking about it, and it was much better to have peace and quiet like this. They walked peacefully for almost an hour, and gradually even Ling Shan and the others started to feel that something wasn't right. Lin Yi bro, why do I feel like this place is weird? Like something's watching us? Ziyu curled up as she observed the surroundings suspiciously. Everything was still a lush forest, but it didn't feel like that at all. She couldn't tell what exactly was wrong. Yeah, I feel like this place is weird too. Ling Shan nodded. Yes, it is. Lung Lung said the same. Her spirit sense wasn't as strong as Lin Yi's, but it was much stronger than everyone else's. This feeling of something being off was even more obvious. Lin Yi looked at everyone and said in a low voice, "You're right, we're being watched by something, but we don't know what it is exactly yet. Be careful, we'll find out soon." Understood. Everyone nodded. Chapter 52:18. Fortunately, the 3 of them didn't have to be on edge for too long. A sharp whistle came from the sky and 3 black shadows rapidly approached. The 3 disciples of the Archaic Alliance didn't even have time to react before they were snatched away. The strongest among them was at the peak of mid-foundation establishment, but from start to finish, they didn't have the slightest ability to resist. They became prey through and through. What the hell is that? Qintian and the others jumped in shock. It was only now that they got a clear look at the 3 shadows. They were all slender birds, and while they weren't as big as the golden-eyed eagles Lin Yi had seen before, they weren't small either, standing at least 3 meters tall. It wouldn't have been a big deal if that was all, but the faces of these 3 birds were actually 3 human faces, male and female. They seemed to be able to communicate with each other, but the more it was like that, the more panicked they got. Ling Shan and the other girls paled in fright, quickly hiding behind Lin Yi. Even Cold, a foundation perfection like her, was no exception. This kind of fear had nothing to do with strength or weakness. The key was that the other party's bird-bodied appearance was far too bizarre. Especially to humans, it was probably more horrifying and terrifying than any hideous thing. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Gomong? A bird's body in a human's face? This was something that only existed in ancient mythologies, and he didn't expect to see one in the archaic trials that only happened once every 1,000 years. This was unbelievable. This image seems to be Gomong. Could those ancient myths and legends be real? Chintian and the others were tongue-tied. They were all practitioners, and it was because of this that they knew that myths and legends were completely different from reality. But now even Gomang had appeared. Was that still a myth? Who knows? Linny was speechless. These three Gomang's appearance had a huge impact on everyone, and it was as if their worldview had been flipped upside down. In that short moment of silence, the three Gomangs had already devoured the corpses in their hands, but they still looked like they hadn't had enough. Their greedy eyes quickly landed on Lin Yi and the others, making their scalps go numb. Looks like they're not full yet. Lin Yi laughed coldly. He was someone who'd been through a lot after all, and Gomang's horrifying appearance only made him feel a little apprehensive. Once he calmed down, Gomang was no different from a normal spirit beast to him. He'd kill him when he needed to. Plus, these three Gomangs weren't that strong. They were much stronger than the fire bats at the beginning, but they were at the level of a Foundation establishment practitioner at most. They couldn't compare to the spirit beasts Lin Yi had seen on Sky-class Island at all. That may be the case, but judging from how effortlessly they killed a Foundation establishment peak mid-phase practitioner, each of these Gomang weren't weaker than a Foundation establishment practitioner at all. They were a lethal threat to Lingshan and the others. The three Gomangs tilted their heads and talked to each other. Everyone was confused, and Chintian couldn't help but ask, "What language are they talking about?" "Of course they're discussing who to eat first. Fatty Lai, you have more meat so you'll be the first to get eaten." Ziyu plucked up the courage to tease him. She was scared quite a bit, but she'd always been brave. Other than looking a little scary, the three Gomangs weren't that scary. After all, Linny was here. "That's not necessarily true. I have more meat, but fat doesn't taste good. You girls, on the other hand, have soft skin and tender flesh. You should be more worried," Fatty Lai said with a smile. Linny couldn't help but smile when he heard that. He'd been worried that the three Gomang would scare the hell out of them, and it'd be troublesome if something went wrong. But it seemed like he'd been worrying for nothing. Everyone's mental fortitude was much better than he'd expected. The three Gomang chattered for a long time before finally coming to an agreement. Suddenly, they charged into the sky as the group formed a defensive formation as though they were facing a formidable foe. However, the outcome was out of everyone's expectations. They just left without any intention of touching them. The group couldn't help but look at each other, relieved. It was hard to say what would happen if they really fought the three Gomangs. Only Lin Yi didn't let his guard down at all. He was still using his divine sense to scan the surroundings. After a while, his lips curled up. "Playing this kind of game with us, going away and coming back. They're really smart. Going away and coming back? They're back?" Everyone was alarmed when they heard that. Although they weren't as horrified as they were in the beginning, the three Gomang's oppressive and ferocious auras were real. It would be a lie to say that they weren't nervous. To them, these three were definitely ferocious creatures. "They're not back. They never left. That was just a trick to confuse us," Linny explained. His divine sense covered a wide range, and it would be strange if he couldn't even lock onto Gomang, who was only at the perfected level of Foundation establishment. So cunning. Everyone hurriedly maintained their defensive formation, guarding against the three Gomangs as though they were facing a formidable foe. Even a peak mid-stage Foundation establishment expert had become their food, much less their meager strength. If they did not form a defensive formation, they probably wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. After a while, two black shadows shot out from the forest, pincer attacking the group from the left and right. It was the two Gomangs they'd seen just now. "Lung Lung!" Lin Yi shouted as he faced the Gomang on his left. At the same time, Lung Lung faced the Gomang on his right in tacit understanding. Two fists couldn't fight four hands, and Lin Yi's strength was only at Foundation establishment perfection after all. He could handle one, but two at the same time was a different story. He needed Lung Lung to take the brunt of the attack. Otherwise, if Lingshan and the others were to face Gomang's ambush head-on, the consequences would be dire even with the formation. Chapter 52-19. How is this possible? Lung Lung couldn't help but be shocked. The ice-shattering aura was the basis of all her strength. If even her ice-shattering aura couldn't be of any use, then it would be very difficult for her to deal with this monster. Its feathers are too thick. Lingshan and the others quickly reminded her from behind. Unless Gomang charged in, they wouldn't dare to attack recklessly. They could only use this method to help. Lung Lung only reacted now. The opponent's feathers were very thick, and the outermost layer was as hard as armor. Even if she was hit by the ice-shattering palm, the ice-shattering aura wouldn't be able to penetrate her body. Naturally, it wouldn't have any substantial effect. Since hitting the wings was useless, then she'd change to other areas, especially those with sparse feathers. For example, the opponent's creepy human face. Lung Lung made up her mind and immediately used her ice-shattering palm to greet the opponent's face. Surprisingly, Gomang didn't even try to block it. Instead, he wore a very human-like smile on his face. When Lung Lung's ice-shattering palm was about to land on his face, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a green poisonous gas. Wherever the poisonous gas passed through, even the rocks were corroded into a bottomless hole. It was fortunate that Cold Lung's reaction was fast enough to withdraw her hand in time. She managed to avoid the green poisonous gas by a hair's breadth. This thing is too cunning. Everyone was dumbfounded. Although they knew that many spirit beasts had extraordinary intelligence, they tended to be straightforward. There weren't many that liked to scheme, and there were even fewer like Gomang who held back his strength to backstab others. Lung Lung was also shocked. After witnessing the strength of the opponent's poisonous gas, she immediately gave up on the idea of attacking the opponent's face. The opponent's face wasn't a weakness that could be exploited, but a trap that was meant to lure people into it. For a moment, Lung Lung was at a loss. Fortunately, she had the strength of a foundation establishment perfection. As long as she was careful, Gomang wouldn't be able to hurt her. However, Lung Lung had only exchanged a few blows with it when Gomang suddenly changed his strategy. After sweeping her away with a claw, he pounced towards Lingshan and the others. Fuck. Qintian and the others were startled. This guy had a human face after all, he knew how to pick on the weak. What a cunning bastard. Everyone hold on. Lingshan shouted. While the others were shocked, they didn't panic. With her as the vanguard, they withstood Gomang's first attack. In terms of strength, Lingshan was second only to Lin Yi and Cold. She'd broken through again after the tournament, and was now a foundation establishment practitioner at the peak. Even so, she couldn't withstand a single blow from someone like Gomang. She wasn't alone, however. Lin Yi had them practice a defensive formation that could withstand attacks far beyond what they could handle. Even a foundation establishment practitioner wouldn't be able to break through in a short amount of time, just like Gomang. Gomang didn't. He didn't expect that surprised. Lung 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 he. That a G Lung Lung it. Gomang it. At this moment, Lung Lung had come up to them once again. The attack just now had really scared her out of her wits. Fortunately, Lingshan and the others had put up a good performance. Otherwise, she would have felt guilty for the rest of her life if someone had died from her sneak attack. Gomang repeated the same trick. He turned around and launched a claw attack. His legs were long and slender and his claws were extremely sharp. When his speed reached a certain level, the threat he posed was no small matter. Even a perfected foundation establishment expert like Cold would not dare to take it head-on. Moreover, Cold had never been the type of person to fight head-on with brute force. But this time, Lung Lung didn't choose to retreat. Instead, she gritted her teeth and blocked the attack with shattering ice palm. She didn't have a choice, she didn't dare to retreat anymore. Otherwise, she'd give the enemy a second chance to ambush Lingshan's group. Although the first time was a close shave, the second time might be different. Lung Lung spat out a mouthful of blood abruptly. It was not a pleasant thing to use one's weakness to attack the enemy's strength. From the moment she realized it, it was inevitable for her to spit blood after getting injured. Jili Gulu? Gomang paused, realizing that he couldn't retract his claw in time. Instead, Lung Lung had a death grip on it, and as time went on, a bone-chilling coldness spread from his claw to the rest of his body. His entire body was showing signs of freezing. Great. Nice job, Lung Lung sis. Ziyu was overjoyed and wanted to rush up to help. She wanted to let this scary thing have a taste of her instant attack. No. Cold and the others were all shocked by this rash action of hers. Gomang was only affected by her ice aura, it wasn't enough to freeze him completely. With Ziyu's strength, it was suicide for her to charge at him. At this moment, Gomang turned around and spat out a green poisonous gas from its mouth. Cold could muster the courage to take its claws head-on, but she did not dare to touch this thing. She quickly let go of its claws and dodged sideways. Just a little bit of this poisonous gas could kill a person. Jili Gulu. Gomang's face flashed with savagery, and after forcing Lung Lung back, he pounced at Lingshan's group once more. This time, his target was even more clear. It was Ziyu who was standing a little too rashly. Ziyu, get back. Lingshan and the others panicked. Even if they were in a defensive formation and could share most of the pressure, they still needed someone to be the main pillar. This person could be Ling Shan, Wu Qintian, or even Yu Bing, but it couldn't be anyone else. After all, only the three of them had broken through after the tournament, and the others, including Ziyu, were still at Foundation establishment initial phase. They couldn't take on this responsibility at all. But Ziyu's position was too rash, and they could either push her out of the formation or force her to be the main pillar. Either way, Ziyu would be in extreme danger, especially since she was Gomang's first target. The results were unimaginable. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.